If you're looking for an alternative marketplace online for Magic the Gathering singles and sealed products, I have great news for you. MagicJank.com is an online marketplace for people who love all Magic the Gathering has to offer, even the jankier bits. Join the MagicJank marketplace with your own storefront. Whether you're a small business or a hobbyist with more bulk lying around than you'd like, MagicJank.com can help your products reach new customers who love the game as much as you do. Now let's get back to the episode. Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the Magic Jank podcast, the show where members of Team MagicJank get together and we talk about the latest happenings in Magic the Gathering. And as we are recording this, it is Tuesday evening, March 18th, 2025, which means today was day one of spoiler season. So let's get into it. And I'm not here alone, fortunately. I'm joined by the one, the only, the intrepid DamienF16. How are we doing, man?
I'm excellent. I missed doing the podcast. It's been a few weeks. I'm glad to be back. How are you? How are you doing? You're looking sharp, by the way. I love your shirt.
Dude,
looking
thank
very
you.
suave.
It's great to have you back. It's great to be kind of back in the saddle and marching forward. And I decided I was going to do a button-down shirt today just because I could.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with the fact that I need to do laundry. Don't worry about that. But yeah, it's yeah. So the folks on the video feed, you're getting me with my hair kind of coiffed and my and a button-down shirt. So and also And I spent a little bit of time this past weekend adjusting my camera settings, so I think my focus is a little bit better. So I think I'm literally looking sharper than I was previously if I did it correctly. So
nice.
There's that. But we have Tarkir spoilers to get into, so let's freaking go. So today was day one, and so as a result, they hit us with a ton of big sexy mythics, of course, because that's just what they always do on day one. But they also introduced all of the set mechanics, and each of the 5 clans of Tarkir are getting their own unique mechanic, as they tend to do when we visit Tarkir, which I think is appropriate. But they also have a few other interesting mechanics that one of which I think is going to cause some confusion. So let's get into it. The one that I want to start off with that I'd like to talk about, if I can find, there it is. The one that I want to talk about is Omen. So they're bringing in Omens, which is a new spell type that the cards look very much like adventures. Like shockingly, like they're templated basically exactly the same. But they behave kind of differently. So, with an Omen, you have a spell in the lower left corner, the same way that you have with Adventures, except when if you cast that spell, when it resolves, instead of going into exile the way that Adventures do, you shuffle it back into your deck, which is an interesting idea. So that you behave kind of like Nexus of Fate, funnily enough. And then when you draw you could either recast the spell the same way that you did previously, or you can cast a creature, which is there kind of as the default, spell on it. And the one that I want to use for example, there's a rare from the set that they spoiled today, Merang River Regent, which is a 6/7 for 6 with flying, and when it enters, return up to 2 other target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. Which, that's the biggest mana war I think I've ever seen. And then the Omen on it is called Coil and Catch, which is an instant for 3 and a blue, draw 3 cards, then discard a card.
Yeah.
So as our resident control player, talk to me. What are your thoughts here?
I like that you went straight there, because that's exactly what I said when I first saw it. I was on stream today and we were talking about a couple of the spoilers, and I went, actually, this is a really interesting control finisher, because so there's a few factors at play here, but the first, let's just approach this as if it was in a vacuum, right? This card is very good. The fact that you've got a draw spell that puts itself back in your deck, so you can keep redrawing your draw spell over and over, that's actually really good. The only reason that this might not be what you want in a control deck in Standard right now is we just got maybe the best card draw spell printed in years in the last set in Stock Up. Stock Up is so powerful, it's literally seen playing all the way back to Vintage right now. So this is a powerful draw spell. I love that you are putting the card back in your deck. There's a few aspects to this that are really cool. First of all, you can't deck yourself, which is really nice. You can as long as you have any Omen cards in your deck, Jace the Perfected Mind is a go-to finisher in a bunch of decks right now. Blue-Eyed Control, it tends to be good against Domain, which is popular in the metagame right now, so a lot of people are leaning on Jace. I've seen some blue-black control decks popping back up with the Demon again. We saw this a couple of Pro Tours ago in the hands of Javier Dominguez, but But anyway, just these are ancillary benefits. They're icing on the cake. The cake is a pretty sweet card draw spell for 4 mana. Normally we get what, scry 2 draw 2. That's usually like as good as it gets. Memory Deluge every once in a while. It's rare that we get a card that powerful for 4 mana. But this is pretty good. And then of course you've got this decent finisher on the back end. So being able to have a card draw spell and a finisher in one suddenly frees up a bunch of slots in your control deck, and now you can play more counter magic removal, sweepers, whatever interaction you want to jam, and you've got kind of two bases covered. I like it. I think it's cool. I like the River region as a good example of Omen here. However, if we talk about the Omen mechanic in general, this card's kind of cool. I'm not sure, because if stock up, I'm not sure how much this is going to see, but I definitely want to try a couple copies maybe in Blue-White Control, which is on the rise in Standard for those of you paying attention to the metagame. However, Omen in general, I think, it's very clear what Wizards is doing here, right? It was just like Discover. Okay, Cascade was busted. People loved it, but it was busted. It was super busted. It had to be banned in a bunch of formats. Why don't we make a mechanic that's like Cascade, but, we'll try and rein it in a little bit. And we got Discover. Whether or not Discover was still too powerful is up for debate because you still have to ban it in Pioneer and stuff. But this is almost...
Yeah, I think there were a couple of instances where it was problematic, but I think the mechanic as a whole was fine. And we saw it with Adventures, too. Good. They literally revisited Adventures, which were problematic the first time. And the new cards,
that's true.
Nobody really has a problem with them. I don't, none that I've heard anyway.
Yeah, they didn't push them.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. You're right.
They got the knobs right. They dialed it in correctly. Anyway.
This almost feels like a fair adventure where, you're not getting the 2-for-1. You're not getting both spells when you want them. Like, right away, this just goes to Adventureland, exile, and I just have this extra card in my hand. So every Omen card is like a guaranteed kind of 2 spells in one. That's not the case here, of course, because you're putting it back in your deck. So, putting something back in your deck is effectively losing it for the rest of the game. I think that's how you have to consider it. The chance you drawing that card again is pretty slim. We're not playing even in a format where a lot of shuffle effects exist, like fetch lands, etc. Putting something on the bottom of your library or shuffling it into your library is effectively getting rid of it, for all intents and purposes. So this is weaker than Adventure. But it is interesting. I think, as we see more cards with Omen get spoiled, we might see some spicy ones. But this is already a good example of where that Omen putting it back in your deck is pretty powerful on a card draw spell like this that lets you find the copies that you're putting back in your deck to keep playing. You know what I mean? That is cool. Some of the other Omen cards, I'm not so sure. So I think it's definitely weaker than Adventure, but it's still got a unique kind of effect on the game. You're unable to get decked. If you've got a few of these cards in your deck, that kind of thing. What do you think? What do you think of this new Omen mechanic?
I agree with everything. When they first when they first talked about Omens, it's funny you mentioned the mill package. That was the very first thing I thought of. So it's so if I have one of these in my hand at instant speed, that doesn't draw a card is the problem. This one particularly isn't going to do the job because it'll draw you a card, right? So if your deck's empty when you cast this, you're still dead. But if there are any that are instant speed that don't draw you a card in the process and just shuffle back in. If you do it on your mill opponent's end step, you're guaranteed to be able to draw one card. And that could be a really interesting and clever sideboard tech against a Jace-heavy meta. And I think that's an interesting idea. So the fact that is all of a sudden a line that becomes available to us is really curious. I like that idea. And, the River region definitely looks like it's trying to fill into kind of the same spot as the Horned Lockthwail. As a cheap spell that can become your finisher later. But in this case, it's shuffling back in is an interesting scenario. The other thing that you could theoretically do with this is if you can get to multiples of them, and we saw this with Nexus of Fate, and one of the reasons that it became so problematic was players were just churning through their decks so darn fast. They would get to a point where they'd have 6 cards in their deck, and 4 of them would be Nexus of Fate. It's well, okay, so you're guaranteed to draw it and just get another turn. Neat. And so obviously with extra turn spells, that is a unique problem. And I don't think anything, they're never going to repeat that mistake. I don't expect to see that. But with Marang River region, just looking at this, you could get to a point where you're drawing so many cards, you're down to, I don't know, you're down to very few cards in your deck, and the chances of you drawing into another one is all of a sudden much higher. And so if you can cast multiples of them in a turn, you might be able to churn through them. Interestingly, I'm thinking about something with Mind Splice Apparatus or some way to reduce the cost on them so you can cast multiples in a turn as maybe like a Storm setup. Maybe that's kind of a Magical Christmas Land scenario, but I have a feeling somebody out there is tinkering with that idea right now because Omen gives us that mechanical behavior that we don't usually see. And so those possibilities have kind of my jank brewer brain kind of intrigued, you know, like, ooh, there's something here. Let's see where it will.
Your jank
and so I'm
senses
curious.
are tingling.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. My jank senses are going off hard on this one, and that's cool. It's very exciting. So I think this particular card is a very interesting one to showcase to start, because it looks like it'll be decent. You know, drawing 3 cards and discarding 1 for 4 feels correct, like it's on rate, and the fact that it's an instant. Yeah. So stock up is phenomenal. You're not wrong. Stock up is one of the best we have right now, and one of the best we've seen in a very long time. I mean, I love it when Quick Study came out and everybody was like, "Oh my goodness, they power crept divination."
They obsoleted.
And now we have stock up. Like, yeah, about that. How far we've come. But the fact that this is instant speed, I think makes it relevant, because you can hold up that counter magic, like we saw with Memory Deluge. Like, I think Memory Deluge at sorcery speed would have been really rough and probably unplayable. At instant speed, it was great. And I think this is kind of a similar situation where, because it's an instant, I'm considering it. You know, and bouncing 2 things, a 6/7 flyer for 6 that bounces 2 things when it enters, like, whew,
not bad. That's large.
That seems pretty good. So, yeah, even the finisher is controlling stuff as it comes in. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a bunch of Omen cards, so yeah, they're all gonna have different effects. There's another blue dragon that also draws a card and taps something down, taps a creature down. There's a few other Omen cards that are interesting, but yeah, it'll be an interesting mechanic. I kind of like this. I know people are complaining about Omen being worse than Adventure, but I think, again, this is one of those situations where Wizards is always in between a rock and a hard place when it comes to this kind of thing. I know a lot of people were kind of down on Aether Drift, at least initially when the spoilers came out, saying, "Oh God, what a low-powered set! This is such a weak set. This is set compared to Bloomberg, compared to Duskmorn or whatever else." But I mean, that's fine. That's good. Like, let's all remember, not every set can literally be stronger than the one before it. That's unsustainable, and it's much better if it's like, let's rein it in. Maybe this isn't as good as Adventure. It's still interesting. You know, I'm sure there'll be, some powerful Omen cards, but the fact that it's not straight up, I don't know, like the fairy brazen borrower level of powerful cards, like, that's fine. That's not a bad thing. Like, it's good. So I don't mind seeing this. I think Omen's fine. I think it's not insanely powerful, but like you said, it leads to some interesting game states where that shuffle effect has actually a beneficial effect on the game, or maybe you can take advantage of it somehow, etc. But
the other thing I can't wait for is somebody in Commander to play, like, Approach of the Second Sun or something, and then cast an Omen and be like, "Wait, I have to shuffle?" Like, yeah, you do.
Yeah. It is a shuffle effect too. That's interesting too. Yeah,
that might be relevant. Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
But what are the other mechanics we have here? There's a few other new ones I know. Some of them are interesting, but
so each of the we have a couple new mechanics, and each of the clans each got their own. So we saw starting with my personal favorite, the Abzan. Don't worry, we'll get to Jeskai. So the Abzan one, we see on Anafenza Unyielding Lineage, which is a 2/2 for 2 and a white with Flash and First Strike, which, stats are a little low by today's standards, but Flash and First Strike is relevant. And it has this ability, whenever another non-token creature you control dies, Anafenza endures 2. So Endures is the new mechanic for the Abzan, and when that triggers, in the case of Endures 2, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on this creature, or you create a 2/2 white spirit creature token. So you create 1 spirit token with stats equal to the Endure number, or you put counters on this creature. So they either... Abzan drawing on the power of their ancestors, this idea of either one of them comes to help you or their power infuses you. It kind of fits. Kind of reminds me of Fabricate in a way, but it's kind of reflavored to not be artifact themed. And I don't know, it seems relatively simple, and depending on how they implement it, I like it.
I think it's good. I think this kind of card could definitely see play in an aristocrat style deck where you want to be sacking stuff, and every time you sack something, like imagine Bartolome on 2, Flash and Anafenza, maybe turn 1 you play a nesting bot or something, you immediately start sacking, pumping out 2/2s, like instant speed. This doesn't only trigger on your turn, it's whenever a creature dies. Now, it doesn't trigger off tokens, so you can get 1 off the nesting bot, but the token you can't sack, or you can sack but it won't trigger this. But going wide by sacking a bunch of creatures, your creatures become creatures. Then you sack those creatures. It doesn't take much for a Vengeful Blood Witch to suddenly be lethal out of nowhere in a white-black Orzhov, aristocrats, or maybe Abzan, maybe Mardu, something like that. I could definitely see Anafenza seeing play in a deck like that. We've got all the pieces that you need for a very powerful aristocrat. We got the payoff. Well, one really good payoff in Vengeful Blood Witch. It wouldn't be bad to have a couple more, but you've got the free sack outlet with Bartolome. I think there's a couple other ones. There's Ellis Ilcor still hanging around. There's a couple other effects that you can use to drain them out. And then if you have a way to pump out a bunch of creatures, like 2/2s are also pretty, like that's decent. It's not that's much twice as big as a 1/1. Like that's real. A 2/2, a few 2/2s can end the game pretty quickly. And just again, being able to double sack all your creatures in an aristocrats deck, like that seems already very good. So I've already seen a couple. We'll get to another mechanic that I think pairs very nicely with aristocrats, but we'll get there. So I think Anafenza, despite being, like you said, small statted, dies to cut down. Really don't like that. You've heard me talk about that many times in standard. If it costs 3 mana and it dies to a 1 mana spell, until cut down rotates, this is an issue. However, flash. So it comes out of nowhere, and then you get to untap and immediately get that value. And again, if you can curve that 2 mana sack outlet into this, they can kill it, and you can still respond and get value. It feels good to me. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if aristocrats creeped into maybe playable, competitive playable territory. I know a lot of people have been trying to make it work, but it's just never been quite good enough for tier 1 of standard. But so I can see it.
Absolutely.
I think it's a powerful mechanic.
I'm with you. And if somebody taps out to use a sorcery speed, kill spell on one of your things, like a Virtue of Persistence or something like that, flashing this in response to that, all of a sudden it's a 4/4.
Totally.
Because they use their kill spell, they just potentially upgraded one of your units into this. Like that's kind of, I don't know. There's interesting lines there. So yeah, I think this is a good one.
Giving it flash was making it basically
the flash was huge.
Counter
flash makes it
spell almost.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of it opens up a lot of interesting scenarios and opportunities to kind of get creative in how you're playing. So yeah, I think the design on this is really cool. So I'm here for it.
Yeah, lots of good ones, and limited too. It's going to be a very powerful limited mechanic, Enduring. But
there's
a bunch of commons. We're not going to go over all of them, but as you see some of these cards with Enduring on it, they're powerful. Anyway. But what else do we have? There's another couple very powerful mechanics in this format.
So next up, I want to talk about the Jeskai mechanic, and that is featured on Taigum, Master Opportunist. He's a 2/2 for 1 and a blue with Flurry, which is their new kind of keyword. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, copy it, then exile the spell you cast with 4 time counters on it. If it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. So in the case of Taigum, what you're doing is you're getting to cast your spell and then kind of give it like a super rebound where in 4 turns you get another one.
Almost. You're not getting the first cast, right? Because you're not getting the spell and then getting to cast it again. You're getting this. You cast your second spell, you copy the spell, but then you don't resolve it. It exiles. So you're not getting that first cast of the spell.
Correct.
So you're not getting 2 copies of the spell. You're still just getting the 1 spell. And then you're getting a second copy 4 turns later. That's okay. So in this, I think Flurry's cool. If we're just talking about the mechanic, Or sorry, do you want to? You go first. You tell me what you think first.
We can explain. So Flurry in general, it's a thing that triggers when you cast your second spell on a turn.
Yes.
So it's a way to kind of lean into the whole idea of Jeskai spell slinging. This is the clan that gave us prowess for the very first time. So we clearly like when they cast spells. We've seen Jeskai Ascendancy and things like that are all about casting many spells. Like a lot of Storm. Decks and payoffs have featured Jeskai cards in them. So that's kind of what we expect to see with these guys. And I think it's interesting that Flurry will only trigger once per turn, just by the very nature of how it functions. I think that is
gated
huge.
It.
Yeah, that's a huge
Jeskai Ascendancy.
Or it's a change.
I mean, if you ever played that deck, the Jeskai Ascendancy combo deck was very powerful, very consistent, and almost impossible to interact with. And because you could do it any number of times each turn with Jeskai Ascendancy, it was like a straight up powerful, super powerful combo deck for a long time. But this is very clearly, again, just like Omen, a very clear attempt to just gate that a little bit and make it, none of the other ones have that kind of like only once per turn, like some, Anafenza, you can trigger any number of times per turn, with the enduring, or
crazy,
some of these other things we're gonna look at. But Flurry is very specifically, we don't want because there's so many cheap, powerful spells now. Everything is like cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and like does more and more and more for 1 mana and 2 mana. That, I mean, just look at the Esper Pixie deck, look at all the aggro decks in Standard. They gated it, and so how good is this? I don't know. I feel like they really did a number on it by gating it like that. I don't think you're ever going off with something like this, because 4 suspend counters, like if it was rebound just the next turn, bam, I get that other copy. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
But 4 turns later, like, you want to play this in a low to the ground blue-red aggro deck. Yeah, Jeskai, like you said, a lot of cheap spells, cheap cantrips, cheap burn spell, like burst lightnings and these kind of things. You get your burst lightning again 4 turns later, but you're not getting it again. You're getting it for the first time 4 turns later. I guess you get the copy. Yeah, I don't know. So you basically get a second one 4 turns later. Just seems like too big of a gap between on the Tigam specifically, but Flurry's a cool mechanic. I don't know. It seems like they really did a number on it, but
yeah, I think it's interesting. At the end of the day, like, we're talking about whether or not this mechanic is any good. It is giving you a second copy of a spell you cast on a grizzly bear. Like, he is only a 2-drop for 2/2. So like, I think the fact that it's so cheap and all you have to do is cast 2 spells in order to trigger it, and you could theoretically trigger it multiple times, and so turn over turn. So if he survives the first turn, or if you cast, if it's turn 3 or something and you cast him and then a consider, or an opt even, or something or a bounce spell of some kind, just having it on layaway and just knowing that there's another one coming down the pipeline, you can kind of plan around that, and I think that's interesting. And if you get Tigam to trigger 2 or 3 turns in a row and the game grinds, that value I think is going to be very real and could be pretty cool. Funnily enough, what I want to do with this guy is like a Temur ramp package where like I cast an opt first and then throw like a Terror of the Peaks down, because you'll notice it doesn't say non-creature spell on Flurry. It's just spell. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you copy it and you put another one on layaway with 4 suspend counters on it. So like, I want to get silly with like 3 and 4 drops as my second spell that will then come barreling down the pipeline later. Like, I think that could be really fun. Is it any good? I don't know. But like, if your second spell is a Jace Perfected Mind, like, we all know that card only needs to resolve twice to win most games, when you're grinding and doing the control thing. Being able to copy that and just having another one, like, your opponent's on a very aggressive clock, even after, even if they survive the first one relatively easily.
You're right, and I totally missed that. In my head, I'm just thinking spells, as in like non-creature spells,
like instant and sorcery.
Planeswalker. Yeah. So the other thing that's weird, the copy is, so you create a copy, you exile the OG spell that you cast, and then 4 turns later, when that spell gets cast, you copy it again if it's the second spell you're casting. So, when it comes off suspend, you're casting it off of suspend, because that's the way suspend works. You cast the spell. So if you can respond, like, let's say on the upkeep, trigger, the suspend trigger or whatever goes on the stack, or you remove the thing, can you cast another spell before the last suspend counter comes off? No, I guess you can't, right?
Yeah, because as soon as the upkeep that triggers,
yeah, and it immediately puts itself on the stack. So whatever you put on top of it wouldn't be that would be the second spell, not the. So never mind. I thought for a second, I'm like, does that like create? Does it let you double do it again 4 turns later? No, it wouldn't. But I love that. Yeah, I forgot about that, or I didn't even notice that. Yeah, sure, creatures, planeswalkers, like, that's pretty damn good.
Let's get weird.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think the opportunities with this card are very interesting. Whether or not it's going to be competitive and good, I don't know. We'll see. But I think this one might be. There might be opportunities here that could be pretty good.
I would love it if it was, because that would be a very cool card. But anyway, that's just this one guy's ability. I think Flurry as a mechanic could be cool if they like, that's kind of powerful. If they have a couple other powerful payoffs for doing something. Playing 2 spells a turn and having it be your second spell, it does something huge, then that actually is a cool mechanic. I think it's gated, pretty well. I don't think you're breaking this or anything, but could be powerful enough, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. It funnily enough, actually, it reminds me of I think it's Expend is what it's called, the mechanic from Bloomburrow that the Raccoons had, which, not to bury the lead or anything, but those were bad. Like kind of no way around it. They were just really rough. And it might have just been the individual designs, but the idea with that was once you spent a certain amount of mana on spells, it triggered. I think that was there was an element of that was a little tricky to track because it didn't take into account mana that you spent on abilities. And it also cared about the mana that you spent the entire turn, regardless of whether or not the payoff was on the battlefield. It got weird.
Yeah.
And even in limited, they just didn't quite get there more often than not, which was a shame. But at the end of the day, that idea of as you're playing the game naturally, if you do this thing, it triggers. I like that. I like it's, and we see that with Landfall too. It's just a very simple, clean. Like you were gonna do this anyway. Here's an extra thing if you do that more, or and casting a second spell each turn. There are plenty of decks that don't do that often, but if you know you want to do that, you'll make it work, and it's gonna work out pretty well.
It's a good build around.
Yeah, I like it. So the next one, the next mechanic that I want to talk about is actually associated with Temur, and it's called Harmonize. So there's an there's a joke running around that everything is either kicker or flashback. Well, this one's flashback.
Yeah.
So the card that we have to show this off is Urenu's Rebuff, which is a sorcery for 1 and a blue. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Sorcery speed unsummon for 2. That's bad. That's real bad. But it has this ability called Harmonize, which is 5 and a blue. And you may cast this card from your graveyard for its Harmonize cost, and you may tap a creature you control to reduce the cost by X, where X is its power, then you exile this spell.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't actually think this card is good, but I think it showcases what Harmonize is trying to do fairly well.
Right.
So,
it's flashback plus convoke. That's it.
Kind of.
It's it's flashback that can be paid like convoke, really, except not with colored mana the way convoke can.
Basically, it's a flashback invoke. It's a convoke back, if you will. But where convoke cares about how wide you've gone, this cares about how tall you are, because you tap a single creature and the amount that you reduce is based on its power. Whereas convoke, you tap the number of creatures, and that's what changes it. And so I like that idea. The notion that we want to reward decks that have big creatures in this way is pretty cool. Also, having vigilance on those big creatures becomes significantly stronger if you have good Harmonize effects. Because being able to attack with them and then tap them to pay for stuff either during combat or post combat. I think that's really relevant. So
absolutely, yeah.
Even without Wandering Emperor in the format, we still want vigilance. And Temur being the clan of the big stompy things, that tracks,
Yeah, and I mean, all these Harmonize costs are going to be not a lot of colored mana, I imagine. Like this one is 5 colorless, so they priced it a little steeper than you'd normally want to pay, but it's actually pretty cheap to Harmonize, assuming you're playing large things. Now that said, a blue card, I'm not sure how good this is going to be, but in a deck that's in a red or green, any green Harmonize card should be pretty good. Green's got some beefy creatures, red's got a lot of high power creatures. Harmonize is sweet. I mean, anything that just gives you free value on a spell is awesome. So just getting to play the same spell twice is so powerful that they have to basically make it a 2-mana sorcery unsummon, so to balance it out. So that should tell you how good flashing back a card is late in the game, and not even that late. I mean, again, if you have one decent sized creature, you can probably just play this back to back if you want for pretty cheap. Like you said though, keep an eye out for vigilance creatures. That kind of stuff is good. But I like that. Anything that adds value, built-in value, is good in my books. So
and I want to be clear. When I was talking about this card specifically not being good, I'm talking constructed. I have a feeling in draft this is actually going to be rock solid. Red or blue removal and being able to bounce. Potentially 2 things even on one turn. And there are plenty of times when I'd pay 6 mana for an unsummon in depending on the limited player.
Sometimes
we've all been there.
And,
so
Yeah, it's an uncommon should tell you something. Yeah, it's probably decent.
Yeah,
but nice. So what is the other? We've got a few more mechanics. I think 2 more, maybe.
Yeah, we have 2 more. So we have the Sultai and the Mardu. So let's go Mardu first. And that I'm going to showcase that on Voice of Victory, which is a rare. It is a 1 and a white for a 1/3 human bard. And this human bard has Mobilize 2. It also has the text, your opponent can't cast spells during your turn. So it's kind of like a mini Grand Abolisher.
Style? Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. It's pretty solid, I think. But Mobilize, so Mobilize 2, whenever this creature attacks, you create 2 tapped and attacking 1/1 Red Warrior creature tokens. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step.
That is good.
Dash tokens.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Dash tokens, yeah. So again, I mentioned that Aristocrats deck, and this is the other mechanic that just screams, please eat all these tokens with something and gain value. Like just producing a bunch of free tokens that die anyway. I mean, even if you don't have a sack outlet, just having a Blood Witch or an Ellis Core or anything in play, like these sacrifice themselves, trigger a bunch of, whatever triggers off creatures dying. They are tokens, so they won't trigger Anafenza, sadly, but just making a bunch of creatures is pretty huge, right? You're producing extra pieces of cardboard. They don't disappear at the end of combat. They stay right to your end step. So post-combat second main phase, you can utilize them, sack them, do something else with them that's good. There's a bunch of stuff you could do. I already mentioned the Aristocrat stuff. So that's powerful. The Hate Bear aspect, the 2-mana, Grand Abolisher aspect, I think... I've just been playing a lot of Grand Abolisher myself in Standard. Playing Omniscience combo, of course, the only deck that wants to play Grand Abolisher. Grand Abolisher is a little bit better than this because it shuts off artifacts. So, I was playing a reanimation style deck that I'm playing, like, reanimating Omniscience into play. Being able to stop a Ghost Vacuum on my turn is pretty clutch. This can't do that. There are corner cases where Grand Abolisher is better than this, so I don't think this is going to replace Grand Abolisher in the lists the one list in Standard that plays that card. But in an aggro deck, that's very good. Because again, if you're setting up for a big, pump my whole team and swing for lethal kind of turn, this guy just makes it so, your blue-white control opponent can't counter it. They can't, instant speed Elspeth Spite or whatever other removal they have, interfere with your creatures. That's pretty sweet. And again, in an Aristocrats deck, I think this is going to be really powerful because that's another kind of deck that can just go, oh, you're at 15 life. I untap. You can't play any spells? Okay, great. I just go make a ton of stuff, play 2 more Blood Witches, bam, they all die, drain you for 8 or whatever it is. And I think you're going to see this card in Standard. Anything with Mobilize 2. I think Mobilize 1 is a little, underwhelming. And there's some other stuff that we've seen with Mobilize 1. And that's fine. But for competitive constructed play, it's got to be Mobilize 2 or more. But that is big. 2 pieces of cardboard, free, every turn. No activation cost. I don't have to spend mana. I don't have to enlist with another creature or do any... There's no hoops. Just tap it. Just turn it sideways and attack. And that's it. That's pretty powerful. So I think this is a sweet card. And I think anything with Mobilize 2 demands... respect. You're going to have to look at these cards carefully and go, this could be good enough for Standard. I mean... I'm sure there's other shells, but what do you think about this? Is it going to be as good as I think? Yeah, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Amen. Preach, dude. I'm 100% on board with this. And Voice of Victory itself, too, this is a 1/3 that produces 2 tokens. So it's a 1/3 that attacks like a 3/3 with trample, or it's very difficult to block, and it's a 2-drop. This thing, it's giving you everything you want, and it's 1 in a white. This could have been white, or it's a Mardu flavor. It could have been like red, white, or black, white, and that would have been still good in my opinion. The fact that it's 1 in a white comes back to Raise the Past as well, like so many of the other of those Aristocrat pieces.
It hits
I think this card rules.
Right? Yeah. It hits as a 3/3 on turn 3, and even better than a 3/3, they can't chump it with an 0/4. They still take 2, or they can't chump it with a 2/4. Whatever creature they have on turn 2 or 3, is probably, if it's big enough to eat this, then you're not swinging. But turn 2 you're usually swinging for 3 damage. So it's, even though it looks anemic, it is getting in there right away for a decent chunk. So
that 1 toughness or the 1 power is a little misleading in how much damage this is going to be doing.
Right.
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah, I think this card is actually very, very strong. I'm a big fan. Yeah, I agree with you that it's probably not going to, be a sideboard hate piece necessarily, but I think the decks that want this are going to they're going to be glad that's there. It reminds me kind of a lot of Myrel, except Myrel, unfortunately, is kind of the soldier. Unfortunately, Myrel is basically unplayable as a 4-drop, whereas I feel this is a 2-drop.
Half the cost.
Significantly better.
Now, it does, die to cut down again. And I know I sound like a broken record, but you really have to always consider, like, what is the commonly played removal in the format? How does this line up? You're not trading down too badly on mana. It doesn't cost 3 at least, but the good side is or the upside is they have to cut it down on their turn, right? So you're
that's
forcing
the sorcery
them to do it on
speed
their
cut
turn.
down. Yeah, so they're probably not going to get that. So if it's turn 1 and they have 1 swamp open, tough luck. You're gonna have to untap and then cut it down. Yeah, that's it's still dying to cut down, but that's a nicer scenario to find yourself in. And there are a bunch of ways to reanimate 2-drops. Maybe you want a helping hand in a deck like that, or I don't know, but
or
it wouldn't be that hard to bring back. 2-drop cure, perhaps.
Yeah, Raise the Past in that Aristocrats deck, bringing all this stuff back that's gross.
Nuts.
Yeah. Is it Raise the Past? Something like that.
Yeah, Raise the Past is the one. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that works out nicely. So I think Mobilize is
great.
solid. Yeah. Well, and there are also there's some other stuff we're going to be talking about later. Token doublers also work with Mobilize, which my goodness. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, foreshadow, foreshadow. So next up, we have the Sultai mechanic, which is called Renew, and it is featured on Karsi Revenant. It is a 3/3 for 1 black with flying, death touch, and lifelink, and it's a vampire. Nighthawk, welcome home.
Vampire Nighthawk. It never looked so good. Yeah.
Except this one's just a full-on 3/3. It's a little
good.
Has not been skipped at the gym. And it has Renew for 2 and a black. Exile this card from your graveyard, put a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a lifelink counter on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery.
Yeah, so that's powerful. So Renew, the mechanic, is just essentially, again, kind of a flashback effect on all the cards that have it. You're going to be playing this out of the yard. So again, just building in extra value free on a card, just giving you another cast. Even though you're not getting the creature back, you're getting something. There's some, all of them do different things. I think it's really good. You're just building in value into all the cards. It's all great. More value, better. Anything with flashback, anything that, even though it's not flashback, anything that lets you do something with your mana later in the game, when you don't have a lot of cards in hand is awesome. This card in particular, I think, is a good sideboard card for black decks against aggro, because, this thing's already very good on turn 3, and then if you have any good 4-drop and then you untap later or 5-drop and you suddenly give another larger creature flying, death touch, and lifelink later in the game against an aggro deck, that's going to be almost impossible for them to beat. It's going to gain you a bunch of life, trade with their guys if they want to kill it. This is a decent sideboard card against red decks, but I love the Renew mechanic. I think it's just very similar to the other flashback-esque mechanic, where you're just building in free value into the card. You can't complain about that. So what do you 100%. Think about this one?
It reminds me a lot of the 2 mechanics that this reminds me of are Haunt. I don't know if you remember that one, which Haunt was not amazing,
hard to track.
Yeah, it was hard to track, exactly, because when a creature would die, it would come back haunting something, and it would bestow an effect onto them. It became.
But you didn't want to put the card under the card it was haunting, because then it needs to stay in my graveyard. I've got reanimation effects, so how do we
Yeah, it was very it was a whole thing. So Haunt was awkward in implementation. I think this is significantly cleaner, and it's doing kind of that same flavor where it's this dead thing is impacting the board in a way. It also reminds me of Scavenge. Which I don't know for my 2 Golgari homies who remember that keyword, which and I'm probably actually I'm one of 2 players who didn't play Return to Ravnica Limited who knows what Scavenge is. It was an effect where if a creature was in your graveyard, you could pay a certain amount and it would put +1/+1 counters on creatures based on its power. Yeah,
I played a lot of Return to Ravnica. I remember there was some good Golgari Scavenge cards, just free value.
Just free value. And so this is similar, but it's bestowing the keywords instead of the power. Yeah. But at the same time, Renew is one of those words kind of like Landfall, where it doesn't have necessary rules baggage associated with it. So there could be Renew cards that do give +1/+1 counters. We haven't seen them yet. They might be there.
One thing to note, all of them are sorcery only. That is the one condition that Renew, they said in the rules, was across the board. All the cards with Renew, you could only renew them at sorcery speed. So that does weaken it a little bit. Instant speed is much nicer. Doing it on your opponent's end step, or an effect like this would be insane mid combat.
Oh my
But
goodness.
but it does make it a little worse. So you really kind of have to be a little careful. There's a little bit of a dance you have to do to make sure you don't kind of get blown out when you go for the renew, because the renew isn't super cheap. I mean, this renew effect is literally the same cost as casting the spell again. And from some of the other ones I've seen, have we seen it? I don't know if I've seen another
I
renew.
think there've been
card,
like one or
actually.
two, but we haven't seen much yet on this front.
So I don't know how cheap these costs are. So yeah, you're having to tap out on your turn a little bit, or tap low. So make sure the coast is clear, because yeah, it's a little bit of a blowout. But again, it's not the end of the world because you already got the front side of the card. So, but yeah, just bear in mind they're all sorcery speed.
That is a very good call out, because so they're not combat tricks, unfortunately, because that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, so
what's the last one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that covers all the clans that we have, and I got to say, that was all 5. Yeah. So I'm thinking, I don't believe we have any other specific mechanics from this set. So I want to get into a couple of the big bombs that they showed off. Let's go, and let's start with the one and only.
What do you
Ugin,
like?
Eye of the Storms.
Eugene.
Have you seen this thing?
He's back.
Yeah. So
I looked at it today. Yeah.
Yeah. So all my Tron player friends out there, I have great news and terrible news for you. The terrible news: your Karn Liberateds are more obsolete than ever, which is unfortunate. But great news: we have a new 7-drop, Planeswalker in town that is colorless. So Ugin, Eye of the Storms, 7 starting loyalty, 7 mana, colorless Planeswalker. When you cast this spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. +2, you gain 3 life and draw a card. 0, add 3 colorless mana. Or -11, search your library for any number of colorless non-land cards, exile them, then shuffle. Until end of turn, you may cast those cards without paying their mana cost.
What do you think?
I think this is nuts, dude.
Is it as good as the first iteration of Ugin? That's on.
Is this as good as Ugin the Spirit Dragon?
Or will it see play? Do you think it's standard? The Tron perverts are rejoicing. Of course, it's going to see play in Modern. They love this, right? But in Standard, what do we think? Is it good?
Yeah, I love that, because we can just acknowledge, in formats where colorless is heavily supported, this is insane. 100%. But yeah, in Standard, honestly, I have a feeling this is going to be very similar to Forsaken Monument in Standard, which was a card that in colorless decks had the potential to be absolutely bug nuts insane, and it was in Standard for 2 years and did literally nothing. It was barely ever even considered because the colorless cards around it were just trash. And is that going to be the case here? I mean, we have some decent colorless stuff in Standard right now. Until rotation, we have, the what is it? Mightstone, Weakstone, and the Thran Spider, and kind of there's that artifact package, but you can't. Notably, Ugin isn't an artifact, so you can't use Power Stone mana to cast him. So that's right. That is a kind of an anti-synergy there. But there are good colorless spells, and we're seeing more and more decent colorless, cards coming out. I'm also a huge fan of, Collector's Vault and any excuse to run that and other cards that can work with it. So, I don't know. The idea that you can play this 7-drop and it can be similar to a Meteor Golem in that it just, or like a, Cityscape Leveler, you cast it and you exile a thing. And then it drops, and it can immediately give you 3 mana that you can then use to rapid fire out 1 or maybe even 2 colorless spells in order to hit more stuff. It's not going to exile as many things on as many boards as Ugin the Spirit Dragon, but it'll do enough without having to drop his loyalty. And that's the thing that I think is really relevant. So that -11 is a lot closer than Ugin the Spirit Dragon's ult ever was. So... Right now, in Standard, bottom line, I don't think we have the colorless cards to fill in around him. I don't.
I think I generally agree.
Let's keep an eye out.
Sorry, is that? Do you want to add?
No, I'm just gonna keep an eye out in future sets to see what kind of colorless cards we get, because if we get a couple good, a couple good mana rocks is all it's gonna take for this guy to pop off.
It was just like Karn the Great Creator for a long time. Any artifacts they print, a card like Karn just got better and better and better. And then it had to be banned in Pioneer, and then it got better, and then it had to be banned in Modern, and it gave, anything that requires a certain threshold of other specific spells in a format to be good. But if those spells that it requires are spells that are so generic, or not generic, but they're so evergreen that you see them in every set, they're artifacts in every single set. Not to mention the sets where they focus on artifacts like Brothers War, like Aether Drift, or what have you, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, where there's tons of artifacts. Every once in a while we get a set like that. Suddenly Ugin becomes like, this card, I think, is not going to see play right away, but it is going to see play at some point in Standard during its time in Standard. It's almost inevitable because it's a good finisher. The way I see it is, it's always a 3-for-1. It immediately exiles a card, a remove or a permanent from your opponent's board. It then draws you a card, or like you said, makes 3 mana and lets you exile another card by playing a colorless card. So you're exiling 2 cards. Then they have to spend a spell to kill it. So it's always a 3-for-1, no matter how you slice it. That's powerful. However, this is Standard, baby. Atrax is legal. So you have big stuff on 7. A 3-for-1 for 7? We can do better than that. Atrax is a 5-for-1, maybe a 6-for-1. So again, like having one of the most busted reanimation targets ever printed, still legal in Standard, as long as Atrax is around, it's kind of hard to justify playing Ugin. The only reason to play this is in a very colorless heavy deck. If now you want to talk about that road, well, if you go down that road, it's weird that in Standard right now, the artifacts deck, quote unquote, is playing a ton of colored artifacts. It's not like the good old days where we used to play mono brown. Mono brown doesn't work. There's no such thing anymore. Simpson, arguably the best build around in the format, is blue. The replicator hanger bay, repurposing bay, whatever it's called,
or repurposing bay,
is blue. The 2-drop artifact is red. All the white artifacts that used to play in the blue-white artifact, in the blue-white artifacts deck, there's only like 1 or 2 colorless artifacts. All the other artifacts are white or blue, or the blue-red artifacts deck, they're all blue and red. It's really weird. Artifacts all have colored mana in their casting costs, which doesn't work with this. You can't cast a Simpson off this, or with this in play, and exile something. That sucks. So really, this is begging for Eldrazi. That's why, in Modern, in Tron, it's going to be busted. But without Eldrazi in Standard, there's not a single set in Standard that has a ton of Eldrazi. Now, if they print something down the road, this is going to be around for a few years. If they print something down the road with Eldrazi, those ugly sons of beep are coming back at some point.
I love the way you phrase it. The Tron perverts. Yes, they're
so
loving this.
Those Tron perverts are they're frothing at the mouth. So this is a very good card in Modern, but in Standard, I think it's good enough. It's a clean 3-for-1, no matter how you slice it, and it's colorless. It goes in every deck. Everybody can play. Any ramp deck can play it, from mono green to 5-color domain. You always have this option. But yeah, without, like exactly what you said, without those other Eldrazi or cheap, good artifacts, I look at the artifacts in Standard, all the good ones are colored. I just don't see this right now. But it's one of those cards that the more sets that get printed, the better it gets. And it doesn't matter what sets they are. We see artifacts in every single set. They're evergreen. So this is just going to get better and better and better until maybe they print an artifact heavy set or an Eldrazi set or something, and then suddenly this becomes insane. If I were you and you open this at pre-release, I would hold this card. I think this card as a mythic is going to go up and up and up, because at some point it's going to spike. It's almost inevitable as soon as a powerful enough collection of colorless cards enter Standard via these means that we're mentioning. Then this card's going to spike and it'll see play. I don't doubt it for a second. But right now, I struggle to see a home for it. The domain decks, they're not even playing Atraxa. They just don't even need, they're on a Zur combo plan, right? So they don't, you're not ramping. Nobody wants to ramp to something like this. So, but it is super powerful. And I do think it's sweet. It will see play.
Now, one thing that I do want to mention with this, I've seen a lot of players use Ugin the Spirit Dragon back when it was legal, like just on the ladder, people kind of experimenting with things. I've seen like green ramp decks that would ramp up into just whatever the biggest thing was available, and they would use Ugin the Spirit Dragon. The problem with that is the downtick is not really available to you if you used a bunch of elves or something in order to get there, because if you do that, you're gonna blow yourself out, and like that sucks. Well, with this one, you don't have that. You don't have that situation where you're going to hurt yourself if you used colorless ramp to get to him. So I feel like that's noteworthy. So the idea of using a bunch of elves to ramp into this dude on turn, 5 or 4 even, because we all know how silly that can be if you hit the nuts. All of a sudden being able to just have a life gain card draw engine that's chilling there and is probably going to pull like 10 power. And in a deck, you could have... for that -11, you could have a Portal to Phyrexia and a Cityscape Leveler in the deck, as well as your ramp payoffs. And, like, if you get to the -11, pop them and game over. And if you end up ramping into those and just casting them, naturally too, it's not terrible. So, like, something like that might work. Like, it's kind of specific, a little bit of a pipe dream, but I feel like this card fits into that, into a shell that isn't all in on colorless, much better than the previous version.
Maybe.
So I don't know. Yeah. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think that card's kind of nuts, and it also will come in like 4 different styles. There are going to be a bunch of showcases for this one, including the Ghostfire frame treatment, which I got to say is reminiscent of. Well, it's actually a style that they gave the, I believe, M21 printing of Ugin the Spirit Dragon, and they dusted it off for this set, and a lot of different like big characters are getting it, and of course Ugin got it. Yeah, pretty slick.
My turn. I get to choose. We've got a cycle of dragons. They're back, baby. I like this. So there's a whole cycle of dragons. Each clan gets one, right? So they're all spirits as well. They all died. So spirit dragons all across the board. I think 2 of them are good enough. I only want to talk about 2 of them.
Ooh, okay.
I think I think the other 3 are mediocre. The first one I think is really powerful is Ureni, the Song Unending. This is the Temur legendary dragon. It's the most expensive one. They range in cost from 4 all the way up to 8 mana. This guy's 8 mana, Temur plus 5 colorless. So 5 green, red, blue. And do you want to read it? You're our card.
I'd be happy to.
Reading guy.
Yeah. So 5 green, blue, red for a 10/10 spirit dragon with flying and protection from white and black. Now, you might think, oh, that must be overstated. What's the downside? When Ureni enters, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers your opponents control, where X is the number of lands you control.
So this thing... Okay, the best part about this card, and the reason I think it's one of the better dragons in this cycle, is the first line. Flying, great, but protection from white and black? Wow, that is very, very powerful. Remember, white and black are the only colors in Magic, in Standard, for the most part, that almost like 99% of the time, they're the only colors that can kill a creature unconditionally. Murder, exile, that kind of effect. O-ring, leyline binding, go for the throat, all the white and black removal. Red is never killing a 10/10. Never.
No.
Green, never. There's the fight spells, burn spells, never cutting it. It's got to be white or black removal. The fact that this guy dodges all of the white and black removal in the format is crazy powerful. Aside here, I'm going to go on a tangent. My very first Commander deck ever was the very first cycle of Commander decks. When they first got printed and people were like, you should play Commander. It's this new format, blah, blah, blah. I bought Animar, Soul of the Elements. And I'm like, okay, Temur. I'm like, I like these Temur colors. And I didn't realize until another dude that I much better Magic player at that time than me was telling me, dude, you know how powerful protection from white and black is on Animar? And I'm like, no. And he's like, in command, like all the best removal is white and black, spot removal. Like, sure, they can sweep it and whatever, but protection from white and black. And so I very quickly realized playing these games with Animar, that is the most insane color combination for protection. It being a huge creature plus pro white and black means almost nothing can touch this except a sweeper or a sack effect. There's not a ton of that seeing play right now. The most commonly played sweeper in Standard is Temporary Lockdown. obviously not touching this, right? You have Day of Judgment and stuff, but not a lot of decks. Nobody's playing 4 of. Even Domain is on 1 Sunfall, a couple Day of Judgment. You know, Blue White Control plays 2 or 3 Day of Judgment, 2 Day of Judgment, 1 Sunfall, 4 Templock. You know, all the creatures in Standard are so small. Now, this is expensive. But a 10-10 pro white-black dodges basically all the removal out there except sweepers, and then it ETBs and has the Dragon Lord Atarka blow up machine gun all the creatures down on your opponent's board? A Dragon Lord Atarka saw a lot of play, still saw play in cubes and stuff right up until a couple of years ago. This thing comes down, blows up a bunch of board presence of your opponents, and then is impossible to kill, kills them in 2 shots. That's super powerful, right? Am I crazy? Okay, so that's what I think. I think this is a very good one.
Yeah, I think this rules.
I don't know. Yeah, it's very good, right? So it's the casting cost that holds it back. So if you can ramp into this, like this could be an interesting sideboard in Domain against, you know, any cheap, you know, low to the ground creature deck, white, black, whatever, even Esper mid range. Like, I guess they could bounce this, but again, they bounce this. It just comes back down and eats their board again. It can't go to the face. It doesn't do damage to players, only creatures and planeswalkers, but I mean, even if you ramp into this, you're probably still getting 5 damage, 6 damage out of it. Like, you know, assuming your lands, you're let's say you're using Land of War Elves or whatever else you're using to ramp. If you're using Overlord of the Hauntwoods, you just have a ton of lands. This thing is just going to blow up everything on your opponent's side of the board and be impossible to kill. It's all upside. I don't know. This seems like a very powerful finisher to me. But, and one of my favorite dragons here. Yeah,
I'm with you. I think the fact that it blows out so much when it enters makes it viable. Because if it was just a 10-10 for 8, that's not going to cut it. Even with the protection, which is interesting. And like then it'd be full sideboard. But the fact that if you're using land ramp to get where you got to go, and Hauntwoods is phenomenal for that. We've all played those Beanstalk decks with Overlord of the Hauntwoods and various ways to like bounce it or recur it. I know, like I right now the deck that I'm just kind of embracing the up the Beanstalk darkness with is actually running Overlord and 3 Blind Mice to copy the Everywhere token. The amount of mana that I end up with in that, and Doppelgang, because of course the amount of mana that I end up with in that deck is obscene. You know, it's like I have 24 lands in the deck and I'll end the game with 30 in play. It's ridiculous. And so like, anyways. So, you know, Areni is, you know, it's just a one-sided board wipe, you know, if it comes out in that kind of, you know, in a shell where you can ramp very consistently, you know, I think this potential is great. And it gives me
it's a
hope.
banger.
Yeah, it gives me hope for a legit, like, Temur green land ramp deck, because this actually is a finisher that can be a huge tempo swing. And that's difficult to answer. I love that. I think that's awesome.
Go for the throat. Bitter Triumph, Leyline Binding, like you name it, nothing touches this. Nothing. Yeah. It's gonna be scary. People don't realize how powerful that is until you play against it and you're like looking at your hand and you're just like, what do I have in my deck that kills this? Like, if you're not playing a control deck with sweepers, any other deck with just spot removal is just dead to this thing. I don't know how. It's got to be up the beat, or not up the beat. What is it called? This town ain't big enough can bounce it. But again, like, you're resetting this thing that comes down and eats your board. Like, there are no good answers. I think this is going to be one of this is my favorite. I think there's one other one, but do you want to pick the next one? See if you can guess what you think. What do you think my second best out of these dragons is?
Well, one that I want to talk about that I actually don't think is particularly good outside of Commander. I don't think it's the one you're thinking of, but I want to talk about it because I think it's interesting. It's also my background right
perspective. That's important. I'm giving the standard perspective here. We need the Commander perspective. You're right.
Teval, Arbiter of Virtue. This card is a very interesting one, and I wasn't going to let us end this podcast without talking about it. It is a 6/6 for 5, 2 black, green, blue with flying and lifelink. 6/6 flying, lifelink for 5. Spells you cast have Delve.
That's powerful.
We can just appreciate that line for a second. But then, whenever you cast a spell, you lose life equal to its mana value.
Right.
Ooh.
Right. So, good check. Good gatekeeping there. Keeping this in check. Is that good enough? Well, okay, so Commander where you have more life, I feel like this is obviously
very strong. Right? Yeah. And abusable. Like, you could absolutely put this in the command zone.
Where do you see this? Like, what is some busted stuff you can do with this? Like, take me through a turn with this or whatever.
It's funny. Like when I see something like this, it reminds me, like it has me thinking almost like what is it? Like Bolus's Citadel with extra steps is kind of what it sounds like to me. Because, although no, it doesn't give you access to any more spells, so you'd have to open up your graveyard in some way. But I want something that gives me, because at the end of the day, you drop this down on 5, and actually, come to think of it, that Ugin or other colorless effects, colorless bombs. You drop this on 5, and all of a sudden, if you have been milling a lot, you could then delve out a Portal to Phyrexia, Cityscape Leveler, any of these big bombs, or that Ugin on turn 5. It's going to hurt because it's going to force you to exile that many cards from your graveyard and then also lose that much life. So that's a thing. But if you have a huge bomb that you're trying to get to fast that has a ton of colorless mana in it, this is an interesting way to get you there. The amount of life loss. The other thing about it is it says whenever you cast a spell, you lose life equal to its mana value.
Even if you're not delving.
Even if you're not delving it. It doesn't check if it's delve mana. It's just any mana. And so I feel like that downside is far too big. If that's anything, like you got to be gaining a crap ton of life in order to be able to take advantage of this. And you're in a color combination that's not white. So that makes it interesting.
Okay, so one very powerful creature that does gain you a ton of life that you could easily cheat in with this is I don't know the name, of course. It's a 7 mana with 7 abilities, ward 7, pay 7 life. That guy, he is standard
Sire 7 deaths.
Sire of 7 deaths. I was going to say Sire of Insanity, but I know that's a Rakdos card. I'm like, I know it's Sire of something. Sire of 7 deaths, bam, but doesn't have haste. If this thing had haste, that's the combo. I could see that. That could be something to explore. But with no haste, it feels like Gristlebrand, where, you would play Gristlebrand, pay 7 to draw 7, and then you're like, okay, well, I need to gain life here, or I can't keep drawing cards. If even just drawing 7, so like having Gristlebrand come in off sneak attack or whatever was really the reason, it was so powerful, because you gain that life immediately and just refill your hand. This, I mean, I want to play it and immediately delve, but the fact that delve doesn't pay colored sources is rough, because this is already 3 colored sources. So then, you're going to, like, do you have enough mana left over to play another spell and delve? Like, you got to fill your yard, and then you've got to play expensive colorless casting cost stuff to kind of go off with this. And then you got to have this come into play. So it's a lot of hoops. We were talking about this on my stream again earlier, and I said I don't see it in standard or anything, but in Commander, where you have a bigger life buffer, there's stuff you can do there. Like Sire's a big life linking beefy boy you can throw into play.
That's
I don't know what else.
Yeah.
But again, not having haste, like I wanna get that life back right away, because that's 7 life. Like that's even in Commander, that's a big chunk.
But in Commander, you also have things like Lightning Greaves as well, which, and those kinds of, haste enablers that are much cheaper and easier to get to. So,
that's nice.
But I think Sire is a great shout out. I think that's probably as good as it's going to get with Teval. The problem is, if you do drop that, you take this big hit, but you stabilize with these huge chunky life linkers. Do you want to be casting anything the following turns? Like, even, you're swinging and you're gaining some life back, but like every spell you cast, I mean, you got to be careful, because I almost want to, like, funnily enough, there's a part of me that almost wants to donate this to my opponents so that, so that their spells hurt them.
To watch them die.
Watch them not pay attention to it. And I don't know. Funny. That's probably not, pacify it and hand it to them and see, have fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. It's weird.
It's a chart right now.
This is so bizarre to me, and it's for being a color combination where black is kind of central, it kind of makes sense. This idea that you have such an incredibly powerful upside, but such a dangerous downside. I think this is probably breakable. I'm sure somebody will come up with it, and I think Sire is a good shout. I like that a lot, actually. Yeah,
could be.
So
and
it's interesting.
Yeah, I guess Ugin does gain you 3 life right away if you draw a card, but I don't know. You need to have some big payoffs. I mean, Treasure Cruise, Dig Through Time, those are the most busted, delve spells ever, because they were 8 mana, but you're casting it for 1 instead. Like, that's the kind of discount I want. If you're just playing a 6-drop that costs like 4 colorless and 2 blue or whatever, and you're getting 4 colorless off, like, that's powerful, but not quite as busted as like, I want to, if you're gonna like all your spells have delve, that is very scary, and it's clear they know how powerful that is by giving it this check to its power, by you paying life. Yeah, that just reins it in so much that I don't know. I don't think there's anything that I can think of in standard, but you're right. Somebody in some other format might totally break it. Who knows, modern or legacy.
One thing that I do just want to call out, Platinum Angel in this doesn't necessarily work the way you want it to, although that's probably a good idea. Because
why is that?
Well, just because if you throw this out and then delve out Platinum Angel, you lose the life before it resolves. So just be aware of that, kids. If your life drops to zero, the Platinum Angel's on the stack, you still die. Just so you know.
Yeah.
So be careful with that. But
once it's
if you
in
drop
play,
this and you have more than 7 life, then you throw Platinum Angel, then go nuts. Like
that's interesting. Yeah, Platinum Angel. There you go.
So I don't know. That's something.
Well, there is one other dragon that I thought was really good. This
What
one I don't think is good enough for standard, but yeah, maybe Commander. There's some interesting stuff there. The other one I thought was decent was Betor, Kin to All. This is the Abzan dragon. It's again 5 mana, so considerably cheaper than Ureni. He's got an unfortunate name. But he's a little bit. He's got a weird like kind of scaling ability. A lot of words. Too many words. Ignore 2/3 of those words. The only words that matter are the first sentence. Which would you like to?
Yeah. So Betor, 2 white, black, green for a 5/7 flyer. At the beginning of your end step, if creatures you control have total toughness 10 or greater, draw a card.
Great. Stop. That's all you need to know.
and no, if you have 20 or greater, you untap each creature you control, so you get kind of a Seedborn Muse kind of thing going on. Then if the toughness is 40 or greater, each opponent loses half their life. But like that's
if you have 40 toughness on the battlefield and you haven't won the game yet, scoop and stop playing this game. You don't know what you're doing. Stop. Just stop. Your career's over. But the first sentence is incredible. At the beginning of your end step, if creatures you control have a total toughness of 10 or greater, draw a card. This has 7 toughness. So the fact that this is in play already means that you're almost there. You're almost at 10 total toughness on the battlefield immediately. Mm-hmm. So if you have, this is on turn 5, you curve into this with anything, basically. Let's play Land War Elves. Turn 2, we play Sentinel of the Lost City. And then turn 4, we play this. Bam, immediately draw a card. The fact that this is a 5/7 that immediately replaces itself and flies is very powerful. It's going to dodge everything except unconditional removal. It's going to immediately replace itself. So if they do go for the throated or whatever, you're not that sad. You've got your card back. And then if they don't kill it, it just draws you 2 cards a turn. That's fantastic. Forget about the 20 toughness, the 40 toughness. That's silly. But just the 10 toughness and the fact that this gets you 70% of the way there by itself actually is kind of interesting. I could see this in a junk deck, maybe, or a Abzan deck out of the sideboard. I call Abzan junk still from back in the day. I'm an old man. But it's very powerful. I think this is close to being good enough just because, again, it replaces yourself on your end step. It's not your next upkeep. So if they tap out and you get to play this and you draw the card, that's rough. Your opponent kills it and it's just like they're still down. They're down a card. Anyway, I don't know if Abzan's going to be good enough, that color combination, but the fact that this is a 5-drop that starts drawing you 2 cards a turn and is large, just a huge flying creature that's going to end the game soon, is kind of sweet. I thought maybe something like this is good enough for standard, but again, it would depend on the context of the metagame and if they're an Abzan deck makes sense. But what do you think? Is this one good enough or maybe not? What do you...
I'm definitely interested in everything you're saying with this. That first line is definitely the one that matters. The notion that if you do get like a Pride of Hullclade and a Cherix the Raging Isle or some of these big, like very big, stupid, silly, gigantic toughness things down, because like Pride of Hullclade is legal in standard right now, and I believe it has 15 toughness. If you do that kind of thing.
I don't know what that card is.
Of course nobody remembers it because
Pride of the Hullclade.
Pride of Hullclade. It's the Simic card from Murders of Karlov Manor. Yeah, it's a 2/15. And it costs X less to cast, where X is the total toughness of creature you control. So it has a blue activated ability, but if you just care about the butt, that's not an issue. So it's
okay.
So anyway, so like there are a ton of toughness matters. We have cards like this. We also have like Bedrock Tortoise, which I'm sure most people forgot about as well. It's a 0/6 for 4 as long as it's your turn. Creature control have hexproof, and each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness. So it's a 6/6 for 4 with just a ton of upside, but it's a 4-drop, so nobody plays it. So we have these kind of toughness matters cards running around in the standard card pool right now, and they aren't being played at all. And this all of a sudden gives you a payoff for those, and I think that's kind of neat. So I don't know. I'm intrigued at the possibilities. Yeah.
You don't have to go that deep. You just play a 3/3 for 3 or whatever. Like I said, you could play a Sentinel of the Lost City. It's already a decent green 3-drop. Just curve into this with literally any other creature before it, and you're immediately drawing a card when this comes down. I think that's decent.
But I'm saying if you're going that deep though, if you bring a big toughness package, all of a sudden that 40 or greater to have each opponent lose half their life rounded up isn't so bad. It is half rounded up, which
40 toughness though.
40. I mean, by the time you've jumped through that many hoops, like dealing damage to an opponent that will never be lethal, it does kind of suck. Like that is a problem.
Even 20 toughness is like you get pseudo vigilance. 20 toughness, I can get pseudo vigilance with Virtue of Loyalty for 5 mana. Why do I?
We see that effect all over the place. So that the 20 or greater is not really.
Don't fly too close to the sun with this one. Just get your free card. Be happy. Call it a day.
I do. Yeah, I think just as a big beater that'll draw you some cards at the top end of a mid-range deck. Yeah, great. I'm on board. Let's go. Yeah.
So those were the two I thought were good. Was Uranian Beator, Neriv, Teval's okay. I think is there another one? That's it, right? There's four clans. I thought there were 5. They're 5. What's
Teval, Uranian, Nerev, Beator.
Have they not spoiled the last one? I don't see it here. Maybe I'm missing it.
They might not have.
Am I crazy?
I thought they had, but
They didn't spoil the whole cycle. Neriv doesn't seem great to me. We don't have to talk about every single one here, but I just wanted to pick a couple of them because there's some other cards I want to get to here. But
absolutely.
Neriv's okay. The Mardu
Neriv's
one,
interesting.
yeah,
4/5 for 4. If a creature you control that entered this turn would deal damage, deals twice that much damage instead. So like it buffs haste and bolster and those kind of effects. So like, all right, it feels very Mardu. Like, I don't think it's going to see play.
4/5's a decent cost. It's the cheapest one out of all of them, but
true. But it's still too expensive for a good aggro deck these days.
I agree, exactly.
Which is a shame.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, so what do you want to move on to?
What do you have anything in particular that you'd like to dive into? Because I've got a few others. Yeah.
I've got a funny one. I think it's hilarious that Craterhoof Behemoth is back, baby. Craterhoof Behemoth is back in Standard after all these years, and I mean, if you've never played against Craterhoof, it's a scary card. It comes out of nowhere and murders you. And we have Llanowar Elves in Standard as well. So when I saw this, I'm like, oh, here we go. It's like Wizards is like, that's it. Mono green has to be good. Give them Llanowar Elves. But sir, we can't give them. Give it to them. And then Llanowar Elves still not good enough. All right, fine. Give them Craterhoof Behemoth. They need more. They need more help. It's like we're giving the green deck so many tools here that Craterhoof is scary in a format with Llanowar Elves with a bunch of other ramp. It's been a long time since it was legal in Standard. We have Nissa kind of does the same thing on 7 mana, right? If you're playing mono green and you got a ton of forests, you just Nissa -7. That's almost the same as a Craterhoof. Is this something that you think would ever see play in Standard again? I don't know.
It's funny that you liken it to Nissa because I completely agree, but I think Nissa gives you a lot of other utility. There are a lot of matchups where Nissa's pretty darn good, where Craterhoof might still just not quite do it. I feel like Craterhoof is a little too linear. Yeah. It is the best in class as far as overruns go. Like to the point where like there's as a commander player, I find this card kind of annoying. Like I don't hate it. Like it's not that it's doing anything bad, and I understand people's love for it, but I don't know. I want to be able to play Enduray's Forerunners and have somebody and just for once ever have somebody ask why isn't that Craterhoof? Because it's pigs and I like it. Shut up. Like
who doesn't like bacon?
Exactly. Because I want to hit you with Growl Pigs. That's at the end of the day, if you're going to be doing any kind of overrun ever, if you cast an overrun of any kind in a commander deck, people just assume it's a redundant effect and Craterhoof is in your deck because it should be. That's the optimal thing to do. If you want an overrun, this is the best one that they have ever printed, and I hope will ever print.
Upgraded to Mythic. Used to be a rare, right? I think it was a rare. Wasn't it?
I think so.
Mythic.
But even
That's
so,
weird. I never realized.
like I think that upshift's appropriate because but anyway, like I don't expect this to be good in standard at all. I will be shocked if it sees play in standard, and that's even with cards like Collector's Vault that can hide away cheated out like on turn 4 or 5. We have like the whole elf package. Like you mentioned that we have Llanowar elves,
but Cage,
we also have like the Archdruid, we have Dwynen's Elite, like we have so many phenomenal elf cards that are available to us right now. And like I've definitely tried making the elf deck work in standard. It is way too slow. It is way too soft to removal. It does nothing, which is just wild given just how good they are or how good they have been historically throughout Magic's history and how many of the pieces are here. But even with this, I don't think it's going to work.
I agree. I think standards pass this by. I think the power creep has passed this by. I mean, just Nissa being around, why would you play this over Nissa? After that, we don't have End Race 4 runners anymore. There is no big, pump my team. The only advantage this would have over Nissa is it's fetchable by something like the stupid green tutor.
Yeah,
sure. Archdruid's Charm, or the 1-mana green card that collects evidence, and you can go get a creature or a land from your deck.
Analyze the Pollen.
What's it called? Analyze the Pollen. Yeah, I keep wanting to say Anoint Infliction. That's obviously, but Analyze the Pollen. Can go get this. Can't get Nissa. There's a few things that I think Craterhoof would make more sense in a green deck that's tutoring and stuff. If you have ways to find it, stuff like the Analyze the Pollen. But I think I agree with you. I mean, just compare this to Nissa's cheaper. First of all, it's scale. You can play Nissa on turn 5. You just pay the life, and not to mention the fact that you blow up artifacts, blow up enchantments, or make creatures if you're not, you don't have a board. If your opponent just wrathed, on and on and on. But I think there are pros and cons to both. Like I already mentioned a couple with the Analyze and other stuff. I think being a creature is actually a good thing. This puts itself on the battlefield as a huge hasty attacker as well. Where Nissa doesn't.
True.
Like you already have to have a board with Nissa. So I don't know. I think I wonder. It made me laugh when I saw it, and I thought, man, like this card still sees play in cubes. Like a lot of right up to vintage cubes still has Craterhoof in it, and not always Nissa. So I don't know. I kind of want to see it happen again, but we'll see if it ends up being good enough.
I'm with you on that, but like right now we've had Moonshaker Cavalry in the format for over a year, and it's been a non-factor, and it's basically a white. I do believe Craterhoof is better than Moonshaker Cavalry. I'm gonna state that. Feel free to sound off on the comments whether you agree or disagree. But at the end of the day, don't come at me. Yes, I know Craterhoof is better than Moonshaker, but because Moonshaker doesn't have haste and giving flying, if your opponent has small flyers, they can still chump block. Whereas Craterhoof, things get so large and they all get trampled. So like blocking
and green
irrelevant.
Ramps white does getting to an 8-drop in white. Like
yeah. So at the end of the day, but a lot of the good go white decks that we've seen have been Moonshaker Cavalry. We have ways to cheat it out, and just I've tried making this work, and they all feel bad, like they just do. And Craterhoof will feel better than that. I think regardless, Craterhoof Behemoth is going to do the exact same thing that Rhystic Study is doing on Arena. A ton of people play Rhystic Study in Brawl because it is an S-tier bomb in Commander, not realizing that it doesn't actually translate that well to Brawl, really. Like, it's not terrible, but it's nowhere near as good as it was. And I feel like you're going to see Craterhoof on the ladder a ton at a disproportionate amount. The results will not look... This is going to be one of those where, like, I bet if you look at, like, untapped stats, after it comes out, you're going to see plenty of decks that are very popular with, like, a 45% win rate with this card in it. Like, you're going to see that. Because people want to play with their... with their favorite toy, and I can respect that. You kids have fun, but I don't think the play rate that we see is going to be reflective of the value and the wins with this one. I'll be shocked.
Yeah, casual like in Brawl and stuff. I'm not sure. I think it's still powerful, and just having an additional overrun effect is always good. So you're gonna, like you said, you're gonna play it in the deck with End-Raise Forerunners and with Nissa and with whatever.
Oh, and in Brawl it's already all over, but yeah. But
right.
And this new art, though, I also want to call it, looks freaking amazing. Yeah, art by Magali Villanueva, and they've rebranded it to look like this huge, like, mammoth that almost looks like it's a part of the forest that is, clearly in Temur lands, which is just, it's pretty dope, not gonna lie.
Looks cool, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you honestly, go next.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah?
you got it. It's a very valuable card as well. So I'm always down for reprints of it. You know, just keep them coming.
Another good point. Yep.
Yeah, lower the value of that a little bit more. That's never a bad thing. All right, so I did a little foreshadow earlier, and I want to pay that off. I didn't forget. Don't worry.
Yep.
So, actually, fun fact: this card. Yeah, this is a new 5-drop Planeswalker. This is one of 2 Planeswalkers, I believe, that are because we have Ugin as well. Elspeth, Stormslayer. This is a legendary Planeswalker Elspeth for 3 white. Starting loyalty 5, and it has a passive because we all know how great Planeswalkers are when they have passive abilities. They're my favorite, and I know by the face you're making, Damien, they're your favorite too. All right, so Elspeth Stormslayer. I know. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. Gross. And +1, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. But that's never just 1 because of the passive. 0, put a +1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain flying until the end of your next turn. -3, destroy target creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, the static is crazy, right? I mean, the doubling season static ability is like, you're thinking, okay, so like again, let's just think about standard for a second. We've got like, decks like mono white, which I played a lot, and they played the 4 mana Elspeth, which is much worse than this. That kind of a deck wants something like this. Any deck with Caretaker's Talent, you're already playing, the Fountain Ports and the Carrot Cakes and whatever else, Virtue of Loyalty. There's a million ways to make tokens. So obviously this is just incredible with all of those cards making tokens. You can go wide so quickly with this card. It's ridiculous. Overlord of the Hauntwoods makes a land token. You can copy that and make 2. There's a bunch of ways to make tokens that are powerful. But it's 5 mana. Like Overlord, you've already cast it by the time this comes into play. And, all these other effects, Carrot Cake and Caretaker's Talent and all this other stuff, Virtue of Loyalty. Like, by the time you get to Elspeth, it's going to come down and then, usually just make 2 1/1s. If you have a big enough board, this does do a semi-respectable impression of an overrun, like +1 counter on all your creatures gain flying. That can come out of nowhere and kill somebody. But, you're either going really wide and then this is the top of your curve, overrun, or, they sweep you, whatever, you draw this on an empty board, you start pumping out creatures. It defends itself, which is nice. Like, I like that it comes down and defends itself, because that was one of the big problems I had with the last Elspeth, the 4 mana Archangel Elspeth, which I played a bunch, and it just doesn't defend itself. Like, 4 mana to make 1 1/1 is not great, but is 5 mana to make 2 1/1s good? Not really. I wouldn't pay 5 mana for 2 1/1s. I don't think anybody would, even in standard, let alone on a different format. So I see like how busted this could be. Like the ceiling is very high. Like God, like there's so many ways to make tokens, so many different types of tokens, treasure and food and maps and the land token that I mentioned off Overlord and But at 5 mana, like by the time this comes down, what else do you have in your hand that you're like making tokens with? You know what I mean? Most of the stuff is pretty small, pretty cheap. So I don't know if this is that great. I love Caretaker's Talent. That is a deck. Maybe this sees play in that deck, but that deck's already kind of fallen by the wayside in Standard. So I don't know. What do you think? I'm not crazy about this, but
I think that Caretaker's Talent deck, I mean, this was made for that. Like, completely.
Yeah.
Like that slots in so perfectly. Honestly, this card looks insanely cracked to me, and I feel like we have the same situation that we just said with comparing Craterhoof Behemoth with Nissa Ascended Animist. We're having the same thing, but like with Anointed Procession and this. In any deck where I would put Anointed Procession, why wouldn't I put Stormslayer in there? Because Elspeth it has the effect on it already. It does cost 1 more mana, but it itself is a token generator. Token generator, it has the overrun effect. It's a token generator, it's an overrun, and the -3 could kill the largest, threatening creature that would otherwise be lethal, which that's kind of a desperation move. You don't want to be doing that, but you could.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's also a 2 loyalty planeswalker that's probably going to pull some damage, So there are board states where that's relevant. The number of options you get on this thing strikes me as kind of insane. And any deck that's running Doubling Season, any deck, like every commander deck out there that's running Anointed Procession right now could take it out and slot this in,
Sure.
But that's kind of a given. Like, it's a token doubler. It's good in Commander. That's the lowest hanging fruit, like, coldest take ever.
Isn't Anointed 3? Is it 3 mana for Anointed?
Anointed's 4, if I'm not mistaken.
4. Okay, that's closer. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 3 and a white.
You're
so
right.
Yeah, you tack another white onto it and you get the same effect. The other thing is it's tokens being created under your control. It doesn't care if you make them. So like with Get Lost, you're not giving them 4 map tokens or anything crazy like that. And it's any token. It's not just creature tokens. Like I saw plenty of people trying to make O'Hare Talk work, and that was a 6 drop that just tripled your creature tokens. Like it was so much. I mean, nowhere near as good as this in my opinion, and that's definitely just Timmy Commander nonsense. This is much closer to being playable in my opinion, compared to that. And in those Caretaker's Talent decks where you're running, if Standard slows down, I think that's the biggest thing. Right now, I feel like the Caretaker's Talent deck just it has enough rough matchups in the current meta that it's fallen by the wayside, but I think that package is still really darn good. And if the current, I don't know, if something shifts and the red deck just calms down a little bit and we get a chance to actually, start running like a 5-mana sweeper is decent again. If we can get back to that point, I think the Caretaker's Talent decks have a chance to step up. And I think Stormslayer is an upgrade over Archangel Elspeth in those decks, even at the higher mana cost, in my opinion. That's kind of my feeling on it. Yeah,
I agree. I think if that deck makes a comeback, if a Caretaker's Talent deck exists again at some point, this will be a part of it. I'm certain. Yeah, you're right. I guess there's no big ultimate here. 5 mana to kill one thing is pretty bad.
Yep.
But yeah, it just that synergy. Like how far can we push that synergy with other token making stuff, or go wide and send everything to the air, kill them. Maybe there is a shell where this is good. 5 mana is a lot.
If you untap with an Overlord of the Mistmoors, like no longer impending, drop this and swing. Like, what's your opponent going to do? Like, that's terrifying. And that Overlord could even be a 7/7 flyer as it swings in.
Right.
Like,
but again, like, if you're swinging with Overlord of the Mistmoors, you're
already
winning
won
the game.
you already did. You're not wrong.
Extra tokens? That's my only issue with it. But I see your point. Overlord of the Mistmoors is gross. If you save the Overlord, like if you just impending the Overlord with this in play, that feels much better. Just like 4 mana make 4 2/1 flyers. Holy crap. That's insane. So you will see. I don't think it's bad. I just 5 mana is a lot. It's a lot. We're not in the days of Teferi Hero Dominaria or Obnixilis or like these 5 mana planeswalkers that just like kill one thing. This doesn't draw you any cards, so it just like making tokens like that. The tokens better be drawing you cards off a Caretaker's Talent or something else. Otherwise, I don't know. But yeah, I could see it. We'll see.
I think without Caretaker's Talent, this is Commander only, and we're not even talking about it. But because we have Caretakers, I'm willing to. I think it might be onto something.
I agree. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Let me see.
What else? Yeah, your turn. What are you thinking?
I was looking at a bunch of different ones earlier today. I was looking at the sieges. I think the sieges. So here's another cycle of cards. They haven't all been spoiled, but I was looking at the blue-red one. This is Frostcliff Siege. So for those of you not familiar, the sieges were a cycle of cards. There were 5 of them, 1 in each color from the original Fate Reforged, the second set in Khans of Tarkir block, the original one. And they were 1 color each, and they were like 4 mana or 3, 4 mana, 5 mana. But now they're all 2 colors. So the one that they spoiled today, Frostcliff Siege, if you want to...
Yeah. So Frostcliff Siege, 1 blue-red. As this enchantment enters, choose Jeskai or Temur. And if you chose Jeskai, whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. And if you chose Temur, creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample and haste.
Yeah, that is sweet. So the first mode is very powerful, Jeskai. I mean, you see cards like Enduring Curiosity being so ridiculous in Standard. Now, Enduring is better than this. It's a creature itself, which, triggers its own ability. It also comes back, etc. And it's 1 color. But just, curving into this with a couple cheap creatures or something that makes more than 1 creature, and then playing this and swinging and drawing a couple cards with Mobilize. Can you imagine a Jeskai deck going turn 2... the 2-drop that we were talking about that has Mobilized 2, the 1/3 Voice of Victory, and then turn 3 Frostcliff Siege, and then you swing and draw 3, or maybe they have a blocker, you draw 2 still. Like, that's very powerful.
I hate to be a wet blanket on this. What? It's not quite that good. It says whenever 1 or more creatures.
1 or more.
Oh,
my bad.
It's
only
a single card
1?
per turn as long as 1 connects. Yep.
Okay, never mind. I thought that was much better than it is.
Oh, if it was a full-on
And
coastal piracy effect for 3, oh, shut up and take my money.
yeah, I was like,
Yeah,
holy crap.
100%.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that was better than it is. Never mind. I was gonna say because then you even have like the sieges are cool because the blue red one or any of the ones that touch blue, you can reset them with stuff like this town ain't big enough. So early you
Mhm.
play this, you draw some cards. Later you bounce it, you replay it, pump your team, kill them. Like it allows you to kind of switch up the modes later if you can, because so many decks are already doing the bouncing thing. This plays perfect with Storm Chaser on turn 1,
Mhm.
Flood Pit Drowner on turn 2, slam this, draw a card, keep drawing. Later on you bounce it, replay it, give them all trample, prowess triggers, swing for lethal. Like that doesn't seem too bad. I am wrong though. Yes, one or more. Damn.
Yeah,
Okay.
I,
Well,
s- I
that's not
still
quite
think
as powerful as I thought.
a 3-drop that gives all your creatures +1/+0 trample and haste is nothing to
Yeah,
sneeze at. Like that's actually, I feel like that's already pretty impressive. And in those
that's not bad.
prowess
Yeah.
decks, like imagine the Pixie deck. How many times do you end up with 2 or 3 of those otters sitting on the battlefield as like 3/3, a 2/2, a 3/3, and like a 4/4,
Sure.
but they can't attack because they just came into play that turn because you were doing your bouncy shenanigans. Well, all of a sudden, all of them having trample and haste in addition to all their big prowess nonsense. Like, do you want to
Yeah.
be playing 3 color or a 3-mana spell in that kind of a deck? It's probably a downgrade from the one that we have right now, but it's an interesting
Yeah.
kind of thought experiment. Definitely something worth considering because I do think the amount of damage the team remote on this could deliver in the right shell. It
Sure.
seems pretty good.
I mean,
Yeah.
the Jeskai Prowess deck played Imidane's Recruiter, and that just gives +1/+0 and haste, but no trample. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
much better than, well, not much better because it gives you the 3/2 body, but it's
Right.
almost it's similar to that, but and obviously blue red goes right into that kind of a deck, but yeah, the drawing thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's just much worse than I thought. I was hoping it was going to draw you a bunch of cards, but no, not quite that good.
But
Yeah,
if
maybe,
you're in a
but
deck with like Silent Hall Creeper or something like that, like an
sure,
evasive little creature that was going to be getting in for damage anyway to get additional, triggers,
maybe.
getting an
Yeah.
additional card with that, if that's something that you're doing anyway, or like in some kind of a, I don't know if you want to go 3 colors with it, but like Delny, I don't know, where you
Mm,
give creatures evasion to just
right,
consistently
right.
draw one extra card. Yeah, it's not as good as a full, as the Enduring Curiosity, but
Hmm.
I don't know,
No,
an
yeah,
extra card per turn. We've seen how good that can be. So,
yeah,
uh, you
easy to
know,
trigger it if you're going
mhm.
wide. Yeah, I think that's still
Yeah,
okay.
there might be something to it.
Um,
It's not without merit.
but we don't have all the sieges yet. I think they've only spoiled 2. So the other one is Baron Step Siege, which I think was spoiled a while ago. But
Yeah, it was part of
I'm
the
not
first
even
look.
sure
So
if it's any
yeah,
good. Yeah, we don't have to
yeah we
touch on it.
we touched on. I think it was actually one of the more underwhelming ones. I think this one is
Yeah,
much better. The Izzet
yeah, I
one, the
like
Frostcliff Siege,
Frostcliff.
reads much better to me. Yeah,
Right, right. Okay, never mind. I whiffed. Your turn.
sorry. All right. So another one that I think is okay. You know what? No, I'm gonna talk about a card that I know you're gonna have some thoughts about. I know I have some thoughts about, and y'all were curious about it. Draco Genesis. This is
Draco. Oh,
This is a rooftop Dragonstorm. So
yeah.
Dracogenesis is an enchantment for 6 red red. You may cast dragon spells without paying their mana costs.
That's it. That's what it does.
Dragonitions. How are we feeling about this?
Uh, I mean, I like it when my 8 drops win the game on the spot. I don't know if this does. It is powerful. It's more expensive than any of the dragons in the entire format, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
I don't think we have any dragon more expensive than this. So if you're already at 8 mana, why are you not just slamming a dragon?
Yeah.
But
In what
is
world
there
do
a
you
way
have
to...
like 6 dragons to cast following this up? Like, yeah.
Oh, however, as somebody who reanimates a 10 mana enchantment on the regular and crushes people with it, omniscience. But
Yeah.
Draco Genesis can be brought back with a Whale's Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see a turn 4 Draco Genesis being GG if you've got a few more dragons in your hand and you just put this on the battlefield on turn 4 and then slam your dragons and kill them. I don't know. But again,
But
what is the biggest dragon? What are we slamming here? Like
but
maybe it's
but
that
here's the problem.
Yuri.
I've thought about that, right? Because like what I want to do with this is throw like a Terror of the Peaks into a Twin Flame Tyrant into like the Stormscale Scion. Like that's what I want to do, because then it turns into an instant like on the spot machine gun that kills your opponent. Twin Flame is even redundant at that point. The Stormscale Scion being able to buff the squad with the Terror of the Peaks down, that should be GG's. Being able to cast 2 or 3 things followed by the Stormscale Scion, you should have it. But here's the problem with that entire idea. Right now, in Standard, Omniscience is legal. If you're already doing the Abuelo's Awakening thing, you could do all of that with Omniscience, and as someone who plays that deck, you'll appreciate this. If you reanimate an Omniscience with an Abuelo's Awakening, the first spell you cast can be another copy of Omniscience. That way, if somebody has the cut down, and you don't have your Grand Abolisher down, then you can have an Omniscience down. Dracogenesis will not let you cast another copy of Dracogenesis. So... it is in that kind of a shell, which I think is the best place for it, strictly worse. If Omniscience wasn't legal right now, I would love the idea of this card so much more.
Omniscience kind of, obsoletes this. Plus, Omniscience, you just have to play a couple of other cards to go off with it. You don't have to put a bunch of dragons in your deck that cost 5 and 6 and 7 to really get max value. And, when you don't have Dragonstorm, you have a bunch of big expensive dragons in your hand. How are you winning those games?
Rough. Yeah. The one idea, big shout out to our most recent team member, actually, Astral's Flame. He came up with his theory for the best place to use this. On my stream this morning.
He is the Dragon Master. He knows dragons.
And naturally, the thing that he thought was Jund, because of course that's his other thing, Jund and dragons. So he's eating right now. Let me tell you what. But his recommendation was this and Squirming Emergence. So like a Jund deck that fills the graveyard really quickly and then can squirm this out. And then just fire off a ton of dragons. And you could have a mid-range dragon package with like Invasion or Tarkir and stuff like that too. To get you there.
At least Squirming Emergence can also A, play discard effects to put your dragons in the graveyard when you don't need them. B, you can just Squirming a dragon back in a pinch instead of Squirming this back, and that's still probably okay. The dragons are pretty big. Okay, sure. Yeah, that's interesting. Not a big fan of graveyard decks in general right now in Standard. Like Omniscience is the best graveyard deck in Standard, but like Zombify is not even good enough. Squirming hasn't been good for a while. Like it's pretty tough to beat Rest in Peace, and the decks. Omniscience is nice because you don't care about stalking your graveyard. If they wipe your whole graveyard, that doesn't matter. You just kill Rest in Peace, and then as soon as you put Omniscience in the graveyard, you win again. You just go off again. Whereas Squirming, they reset your graveyard with a Tranquil Frillback or a Soul Guide Lantern or a Rip or whatever. Now you've got to spend all this time and effort like filling it back up. That's the problem. That's why Squirming, I've been, sadly putting it aside. Zombify doesn't have the same issues as Squirming, but I just don't think there's any creature that you can put into play that's better than Omniscience. So I feel like the Abuelo's deck is really the only, proper graveyard deck. You can count the Oculus decks with Helping Hand, but they're a very low to the ground reanimator. Yeah. They're not putting 7 drops and 8 drops and stuff into play. So yeah, meme factory, but I would love to see something like this. I'm sure Astros is going to come up with something insane.
I'm sure he will. It's going to be great. But yeah.
I'm going to lose to it, I think.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And honestly, I think this has like a 1 or 2 of in some kind of mid-range dragon thing, assuming that the dragon payoffs are as good as we're hoping, which we'll see. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's a fun idea and probably the best use for this. But at the end of the day, but the flip side of this, the other side of the coin that is worth mentioning for what it's worth, every Commander Dragon deck ever, like if you have a Miram, if you have an Ur-Dragon, if you have a Tiamat with this, like restock my hand and then just vomit it out, like that's nuts. Yes, it's nuts. You're right. It's nuts. We know it's nuts. Like in that format, go crazy, have fun, but.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Cool.
So let me see. You guys talked about some other stuff last week. We don't have to go over everything, but I want to mention a card that I think is funny. My last pick here.
Okay.
I think this is the biggest trap I've seen so far.
Ooh.
And every once in a while I see a card like this that I'm just like in my head like, people are gonna play this. People are gonna they are really, really gonna try and make this good because this is a big, very popular kind of way of playing that a lot of people love that I think Wizards has picked up on recently, and you see it a lot more these days in a lot of the designs that we see coming out, which is stealing your opponent's permanents and trying to kill them with it. Kotis the Fangkeeper got spoiled. This Sultai legendary zombie, and some people were asking me about this on stream, and I was basically saying, no, this is not good. But you could steal and stop. Like, I get people love winning with outrageous robbery, and they love playing Siphon Insight. Back before rotation, I remember going, this card is worse than Think Twice. Like, your opponent's cards are always worse than your cards. It's always worse to take a card off your opponent's deck than just draw a card out of your own deck. But Cotis, do you want to tell us what it does?
Cotis, 1 black, green, blue for a 2/1 indestructible, and this is I believe the Sultai clan leader. Whenever Cotis deals combat damage to a player, exile the top X cards of their library, where X is the amount of damage dealt. You may cast any number of spells with mana value X or less from among them without paying their mana costs.
Yeah, so there's no until end of turn, gate here. It's just now you can just play these cards. People love doing this stuff. This is a 4-mana 2/1. Okay, so it's not
but it's
good.
Indestructible. It only dies to nowhere to run, toughness reduction, exile effects.
Yeah, sacrifice
all the
effects.
Things.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Bounce spells. They're gonna up this town ain't big enough into momentum whatever breaker, and that's it. But anyway, people were asking. I'm just don't fall for. I know it's gold. I know it's rare. I know it's gold. I know. Just like Siphon Insight. That doesn't make it a good card. I think this is a big trap, and I think people just love beating each other or beating the opponent with their own cards. It's like a achievement unlock thing, right? So beware.
I find that so funny because I love looking at Dracogenesis, right? That card is truly in standard unplayable. What it is giving you doesn't work with what we have going on right now at all. And I look at that and go, how am I going to break this? I love looking at unplayable garbage cards and figuring out how can I make this work. Okay, I read this and think in standard, I don't even think it's
I don't want to try.
This is such an obvious trap. I mean, this is seriously this is if I'm walking down the street and there's a box held up on a stick with a booster pack in it. I'm not could you be more obvious?
You wouldn't go for this. Wait. What pack is it? What is it a collector's? Is it a collector's pack though?
I mean, yeah, if we're talking a double master collector pack, I mean, I might risk it.
I'm risking it. Probably risking it for.
Right. But no, this is how bad that trap is. It's a Dragon's Maze normal draft booster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm walking past that.
Okay. Oh, you're okay. That no. I don't stoop for nickels on the ground. Pennies, nickels.
Exactly.
No, nothing less than a quarter. I will not stoop.
So, but so this is a 2/1 that it has Indestructible, which is a strong keyword to protect itself, but it doesn't justify the cost at all. This could natively have hexproof.
Or hexproof.
Or unblockable. They could have given this thing a huge upside to try to support this.
Yeah. And I'm
because
still not
really,
sure.
It actually reminds me a lot of Obeka from Thunder Junction, because that's the card that you get multiple upkeeps if you deal damage to your opponent, and she's a 2/5 with Menace.
Oh, yeah, right.
Reads a very interesting, fun, goofy commander-style build around, and I know a ton of people who have attempted to make her work in Standard, but there are way too many hoops to jump through, the payoffs aren't worth it, and she's too expensive. Well, let me explain Cotis for you. There are too many hoops to jump through. The cost is too high, and the payoff's not worth it.
And the payoff, that's the big one. The payoff isn't worth it. Anyway. But people were asking, they thought it was powerful, and I'm just no.
No. And that said, if I get my hands on this, am I going to try to build it as a Voltron commander? Of course. But that's where this belongs. In casual, goofy, janky Voltron commander. Go crazy. That could be a fun setup for it. Give it a Loxodon Warhammer and some Lightning Greaves, go to town. Get goofy. I have zero problem with that. But that's where this
that's my one call out for the biggest trap card I've seen so far that I think don't beware. Stay away. I don't think it's worth messing with, but
agreed.
So do you have anything else? I don't have any other ones. I think there was some new ones. If you refresh Scryfall, I think they just literally put some more up.
My goodness. There is one other one that I wanted to talk about that I think could be interesting that I want to get your take on. United Battlefront. Because this is one that I think a lot of people in Standard are going to attempt to make this work because it is Coco adjacent. So it is a sorcery for 3 and a white. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put up to 2 non-creature, non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So it's potentially 2/3 drops for 4 mana.
Well, not
non-creatures.
creatures. That's the big catch there.
Factor.
That's the word that reins it in big time. If this was 4 mana sorcery speed collected company or that white 3/3 in alchemy that did the same kind of thing where it's just put 2 things on the battlefield, that would be gross. But non-creature, non-land permanents. So again, let's go down a mental checklist. Like, what are the best non-creature, non-land permanents that cost 3 or less in standard right now that you could put into play? Simpson?
Yep.
Simpson's pretty good.
I think that's
That's really it. Like, after that, I want something that snowballs big value.
Yep.
All the creatures are out, so like, what non-creature is there?
Yeah.
I could only think of Simpson.
Yeah, it's like Simpson, and then all the package that goes alongside that, repurposing bay, the 3 mana artifact removal, things. Sure, if you can hit 2 of those simultaneously, get the Scry 2 on the Simpson and the trigger. Dream scenario, you hit 2 Simpsons on this, like that's fantastic.
Is this the card that maybe makes Simpson good enough, though? It is white. That deck often was blue-white artifacts. I know the more recent versions using repurposing bay are blue-red because they're using the 2 mana artifact that makes golems, the ETBs and shocks, and then it makes golems.
The Legion Extruder.
Legion Extruder, thank you.
Yep.
And because that'll turn into a 3 mana artifact. But I don't know. Maybe you go back to the blue-white versions of artifacts with this. That's the only shell I can think of where this would be good. But is it good? It might actually be good in that blue-white artifacts deck with Simpson.
Yeah.
7 is deep.
Yeah, the other cards, the other cards that come to my mind when I see this are like Caretaker's Talent and Temporary Lockdown, which like Temporary Lockdown as like a sideboard piece in like a Simpson shell. I don't, just because this is in there, I'm okay with that. But like, I think the Caretaker's Talent deck probably has way too many misses to be good with this.
Well,
with its removal suite that we have right now.
I don't know. That's because
do you adjust it?
Curiosity, or you can't get Enduring Innocence. You can get Carrot Cake. You can get Caretaker's Talent. And then you can get O-rings. You could play some O-rings. There's a new O-ring that has like start your engines and taps to pump your team at some point. There's but O-ring. I mean, I don't know. I don't see it.
But honestly,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking about this on my stream today as well, and that's just the conclusion. I've talked with a couple people about this, and that's the conclusion everybody comes to is like, oh, simulacrum synthesizer, and we're out. Like,
and that's it. Yeah, Caretakers is kind of interesting. I don't know what kind of spells based deck you're playing to take advantage of Caretakers because you're Beza and Overlord and Enduring Innocence, and these are all cards that are key parts of that deck that you can't get with this. So I don't know. Maybe
if there's some critical mass of like 3 mana token generators that we're not thinking about that this could find, like maybe, but
then listen to Elspeth.
Boom, exactly. Yeah, you get it. Let's go. Yeah. So anyway, I think this card's interesting. I think it's going to be a tough build around. I think some people are going to try it, and there will be some very cool turns with it. We'll see if it can be consistent enough.
Yeah, I think it's capable of being powerful. I just don't know if those decks that it would be powerful in are good enough in standard right now. Like, we've seen artifacts get more and more and more help. Like, they just got in Aether Drift a whole bunch of new toys with repurposing bay and everything. And we saw a couple people at the Pro Tour trying to do some stuff with it. And I saw a couple matches on camera with the blue-red artifacts deck. It did look powerful when it did the thing, but that was the key issue with Simpson. It always has been. It always will be. Simpson is crazy. When you have Simpson, when you have 2 Simpsons in the first 6 turns, the deck feels unstoppable. Like, it feels like what you're doing, and the opponent sweeps, and it doesn't matter. You just play another artifact, and bam, you have these huge creatures again. It's great. But the games where you don't have Simpson are abysmal. All the other cards in the deck are mediocre, like, compared to what your opponents are playing. They're all like worse version. Your removal is worse than their removal. Your card draw is worse than their card draw. Your creatures are, And so it's just like, what do you do when you can't find Simpson, or you don't draw it, you can't tutor for it? Like, it just those games feel bad. That was always the problem with the Simpson decks. So this giving it some more consistency, is that enough? I don't know. That deck needs help, so maybe this is part of it, but
I think
we'll see,
7 is a deep dig, and it'll make sure that at least one of those Simpsons will show up pretty consistently. Like, this is the kind of card though, like that deck. I've played so many different variants of it, over the past year or so.
The artifact.
And yeah, it's fun. It's a fun one. But it keeps me coming back because I want to make it work. Yeah, the notion of being able to make sure that you can find your first Simpson, like, not quite make sure, but like it's pretty close. And to be able to spend 4 mana and come back from a board state where you have basically nothing and all of a sudden have something is something that deck just cannot do right now. You need to have something else going on. And so I like the idea. I'm definitely going to try it and see how it feels, because I think there might be on something. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see how good it is, how consistent it is or how if it increases the consistency with which you can find and get your Simpsons into play. I mean, that's the big problem with that deck. So if this helps, then maybe that deck has a chance to do something. But right now, the blue-red versions are looking really good. Like, this doesn't really work. The repurposing bay, you really want to be playing the red for the 2-mana artifact, the extruder. So, maybe a Jeskai version, and then you're getting into 3 colors. I don't know. Jeskai artifacts? Who knows? Could be. I want to see what's there. The mana's pretty good.
Things have happened.
Standard. Yeah. Anywho, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Honestly, there are a couple other ones that we could talk about. One other kind of mechanical thing that they are bringing back in a way that they haven't in a while. Hybrid mana, but not like we've seen hybrid mana. But they have colorless hybrid mana. And by that I mean hybrid mana that is a color or 2 colorless. That is something that they're bringing back with this. And so the one example is Rakshasa's Bargain, which is hybrid 2 black, 2 green, or 2 blue. I'll figure out how to say that. It either costs black, green, or blue, or you can replace any one of those pips with 2 colorless. Instant, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So, as a control player, how do you feel about this draw spell?
Well, the first thing I have to do is make a little chart of the various casting costs. So I can play... Yep. I basically am going to play 4 mana on average for this spell, the way I see it. It's either going to be black, green, 2 colorless, green, blue, 2 colorless, black, blue, 2 colorless. That's great. Sometimes you play it for 3 mana with all 3 colors, maybe. Most times you're paying 4. Sometimes you're paying 5 if you're paying one of those colors plus 2 and 2. So the casting costs ranging from 3 to 5. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to cast it for 6, but 5 should not be very often either. I think you're going to be casting it for 4 a lot. So would you pay 4 for that effect? Look at the top 4 cards, put 2 of them into your hand, the rest in your graveyard.
It's not as good as that Omen Dragon we were talking about earlier, which is doing a similar thing.
Sultai, though, Squirming Emergence, this is the kind of card that, look at the top 4, put 2 of them in your graveyard. That's quite good.
That's true. Yeah, that's relevant.
We have a lot of cheap ways to fill. We've got Picklock Pranksters and stuff that are probably just doing the same thing, but better, cheaper. I guess this is an instant as well, but yeah.
The one thing that I want to call out about this, apparently the ruling on this card, is that its mana value is 6 regardless of how you paid for it.
Oh, really?
And so this could trigger up the Beanstalk for 3 mana. Because, of course, we needed more things that did that.
I know, right?
So that's worth a call out as another reason and excuse for me to say, man, could we just ban up the Beanstalk already? But, anyway.
Yeah, I know it's ridiculous. I don't know. I'm still on the side of the fence that the problem with Up the Beanstalk is spells never cost what they say in the top right corner anymore. That's the real problem here. Whether it's Delve, whether it's Leyline, whether it's Ride's End, whether it's they keep printing spells that cost 5 or more, but you only pay 2 or 1. That's the problem, I think. But anyway.
Well, and I agree with you that is, but that doesn't. I don't know, that doesn't become a problem if you don't draw a card every time you cast one, So you're not wrong that is kind of an annoying thing that we keep doing. But the situational cost reduction, I don't see a problem with. But like Ride's End or Seize from Slumber, those are not problematic cards. You destroy or exile a tapped creature for 2, that's fine, or an untapped creature for 5. I don't know.
That innocuous, but Leyline Binding, that's a problem.
Leyline Binding's a pretty darn good. I mean, exile whatever you want for 1 at instant speed. That card is kind of nuts. If you can get Domain going anyway, we don't need to. I feel like Up the Beanstalk elevates it to a level that is
You're right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a bigger problem in older
so-
formats. Standard, we don't have a ton of this, but even in standard, it's already annoying with Leyline and with even Rides End. Rides End Domain was like a garbage, or not garbage, but it was putting up no results at all before the Pro Tour. Aether Drift comes out, bam, one cheap removal spell that triggers off up the Beanstalk, wins the Pro Tour. Like one of the better decks in the Pro Tour suddenly. Like what? And it didn't change at all. All it did was put this 5-mana removal spell that is just 2 mana. Like when your Doomblade draws you a card, that's too good. Yeah. And when you're, 1 mana, when your Swords to Plowshares does it. I don't know. You're right. Up the Beanstalk's a problem, but I also just don't like the cost reduction on everything. I think it's always been a problem. Like even before Up the Beanstalk, it was a problem. People were complaining about the elementals in Modern before Up the Beanstalk got printed. And then as soon as they got printed, oh God, we got to ban it. Like Up the Beanstalk got banned for the sins of the elementals here. Let's be honest. Now 2 of them are banned in Modern as well. It's like, what's the real problem here? Was it Up the Beanstalk or was it your free spells? I don't know.
I think they're both problematic because I have memories of within the first year I started playing the game, they introduced the affinity mechanic. People have been complaining about cost reduction mechanics forever.
Yep.
Because they're really Delve. They're really easy to break. They just are.
Yeah. That's what
so,
I mean.
Yes,
they keep doing it and they keep having to be banned.
I completely agree with your point. Completely, 100%, absolutely. I still think Up the Beanstalk is. I think it's like a magnifying glass on that problem. It really shows this problem that we have because it's paying it off in a really kind of.
It really exacerbates this problem. Yes, exactly what I mean. So I don't know. You're right. Like I'm not saying Up the Beanstalk is not problematic. It is. But it's really just showcasing. It's a symptom of this disease. It's showcasing how this disease is the problem, and it's. How many dig through times and treasure cruises and elementals and everything do we have to ban before they stop making things that have a number in the top corner, but they don't get cast for that number? It's frustrating. This is a very, benign. Bargain. Yeah, like Rakshas's Bargain is a very benign example of this. Like this isn't exactly like, you're not getting it for free. It's still 3 colors, for 3 mana across 3 colors, but
like even if you minimize, even if you reduce the cost as much as you possibly can, you're still paying 3 to draw 2 cards. Like, and mill 2, with some selection. So okay, like it's fine. Yeah. I feel like this is just a perfectly fine uncommon. Just the fact that it has that interaction is just.
It's just it's interesting to know. Good to know, actually. Good call out because the fact that it triggers Beanstalk's interesting, but. Yeah, we'll be getting a lot more spoilers soon, so I imagine next week we'll have a lot more to go over. Maybe get some more bangers. But there was quite a few. There were a lot of mythics and rares spoiled this week. So if you haven't seen them, go check them out on Scryfall or Mythic Spoiler, whatever you use. And I'm sure if you're a casual player like Commander, people are eating well, like you said, right? I mean, people are just like, there's got to be a ton of build-arounds here that are just great in Commander. A lot of legendary stuff, big dragons. What's not to like? Multicolored stuff everywhere, split mana cards, etc.
Oh, let's go. Yeah, and as a final note, there are full art lands in this set.
Oh,
and they're dope. We just got to call this out. So, So the full art lands, so they have 2 different like showcase full art styles, and one of them is actually showing close up of dragon eyes, and instead of the pupil is the mana symbol, which is highly stylized. It's it's a little out there. I've seen some people kind of goofing on it that it looks very similar to the Venom energy drink can logo, which was like a snake eye. Which sure.
Yeah.
But they do look dope. Like
they break my rules for lands that like we've talked. Remember when we talked? It was like, the question of the week, like what's your favorite basic land? Now, I went on about what I think makes a good land, like good art and everything, good. And I think it has to look like a land. I'm not a big fan of any of the lands that don't look like lands, and these are very clearly not lands. But they have the big mana symbol in it. I think some of them look cooler than others. I think the blue one looks cool. The white one, the red one, they all look like a weird iris that could be still an eye, but the forest looks bizarre. The forest is like, what kind of weird, like that doesn't even look, I don't know what that is. It looks like a pool of water in a clearing in the forest with I
think the kind of lizard that they were using as a reference for like that eye shape, was that like a chameleon or something? Like they made a bold choice with that.
All the other ones are like squinting. They're like,
Yeah,
this guy's like, oh God, we're taking a picture. It's like it's wide open. So weird.
Yeah, I think it'll probably look cool in paper, but yeah, like this one, I can see somebody looking. If that's the first one they see, they're like, "What are these?"
Yeah.
Until you see the other one's like, "Oh, it's a dragon eye." Got it. Really? That's a
Yeah,
dragon? Okay.
right.
Like, yeah. But the
They're
other ones,
different.
yeah, they're
Mhm.
different, and it's funny because I actually am a huge fan of the Nyx lands, the Theros Beyond Death ones that look like
Oh
constellations,
yeah, I am
and
too.
I think those are beautiful. But as far as the lore is concerned, Nyx being the land of the gods, like seeing the stars there, like
Yeah.
you could argue that like, well, those in that world, those are lands kind of,
And
or
they
like
got
that
a
is
lot of
representative
flack.
of a yeah.
Everybody gave them shit for being like Pokemon energy cards. That was all
Yeah.
I heard, when they came out. But and they do break the rule of not looking like a land, but I still like them because I can tell immediately at a glance what color they are, which is the
Hmm.
second kind of stipulation for me. Like I need to be able to tell.
Yeah.
Like I hate that Kamigawa swamp that looks like a mountain. Stuff like that just drives me
I
nuts.
know.
But
Yep.
I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the second cycle of basics. There are two cycles of basic full art lands in this set. One of them is
Yep.
that wacky eyeball cycle, and then the second one are these, what did you call them? Shadows
They're
over
like dragon
Tarkir?
shadow show
Yeah,
treatments where they
silhouettes or
show
shadows. Yeah.
a big beautiful landscape and all the artwork just we've reached a point right now where the artwork on Magic cards is just so damn good as a baseline. Like that merits a call out here. But it shows this just absolutely gorgeous landscape, and in it shows the shadow of a dragon that is passing overhead. Which is just one of those little things. Like, I mean, any Skyrim player ever can probably feel that and kind of get taken back
Yeah.
to those memories. And they're gorgeous. Like they're
Yeah,
absolutely
they look
stunning in
cool.
my opinion. Like every single one of them, and the
The
type
white
of
one's
dragon, like
awesome.
the shape of the shadow, it looks different depending on the kind of dragon that are associated with the different landscapes. Like
Yeah.
it's yeah,
I mean, the
because all
white
the
one, you can
dragons in
see
Tarkir have so many different shapes, and they really
yeah.
lean into that.
I
Yeah.
like that. They're all very distinct and they almost have their own like personalities and looks and everything else. And but even though the dunes being ridged, in the white one, like the
Oh
dragon's,
yeah.
spine and things like that. Like the little touches on some of the lands are really cool. But yeah, that cycle of lands I think is very sweet. They are land, which is nice, but they still incorporated this aspect, this dragon aspect into it while not taking away from the fact that it's a landscape. So I
Mhm.
like those a lot more, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of people eyeballing me in standard with their basics very
Yeah.
soon. Yeah, just staring
Mhm.
me down,
They can see
unblinking.
you. Yep. That's gonna be a thing. Though no, there will be a lot of folks who absolutely adore those, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Which, hey, Dragon fans, treat
you
yourself.
go.
Yep,
Yeah,
they're here. Yeah, it's good stuff.
cool.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for hanging out. We're coming up on 2 hours.
My pleasure.
Before every show, we're like, we'll keep this a short one. We will. No,
This is 2 hours is a short one. We just have to
I,
expect that or accept that. It's that's as short as
yes,
it
this,
gets.
yeah, and fair enough. I'm cool with it. Honestly, when you're having conversations like this and hanging out with this kind of company, I'm grateful for that. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, come on.
Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we call it?
Mm, no, not magic related. Nope, nothing new. I'm
Mm.
still enjoying standard a lot. I love what's going on in standard. I know let's not go into that now, but we'll have to come
Yeah.
back and talk about standard. I'm going to be playing this RC in a couple of months, and I'm looking forward to Tarkir and developing. Like standard just has so many sweet decks right now. And there's still, stuff to be explored, which I'm really liking. So I'm enjoying standard. I'm enjoying the new sets. I have a weird feeling. It's like an impending doom kind of feeling. Like like one of those things where there's a deadline coming. There's a something coming, and once you cross that point of no return, everything's going to be different. Like graduating or moving to a new place, going off to college, maybe whatever it is, like in your life. I have this nagging feeling in the back of my mind or something that's tickling, going like, this is only going to be magic for a little while longer. Like Tarkir might be, this is now after this, all, no holds barred. It's going to be crazy. There's, Final
Mm.
Fantasy's coming and then Spider-Man, and the face of
Yeah,
standard is going to
I was just about to
completely
say. Yep.
change. And I feel like Tarkir is going to be the last bit of normalcy before stuff goes crazy, and we'll see what happens with standard. So it's like the calm before the storm. I feel like, which is ironic. This is Dragonstorm coming, and I think it's going to be a sweet set. I hope it's good, and it's a magic set. It's a block we know. It's all magic lore, dragons, sure. Like this is great. And then after that, I feel like it's going to be the Wild West, and so I don't know. I hope to enjoy for the next few months, and then we'll see what happens. But that's it. Yeah. How about you? Is there anything else you wanted to say, or what's on your mind these days before we shut it down?
Honestly, I think this set looks fantastic, and I think we need to really lean into it and really celebrate it because, I think this is the thing that people have been missing for a long time. Everything we've seen so far is telling me that this set is going to be the return to form Magic set that Universes Beyond, haters or skeptics, I should say, have been complaining about. All the comments about Outlaws and Murders of Karlov Manor and Aether Drift,
hats.
all that stuff.
Everybody's got their hats.
This is what you guys are asking for. This is not a hat set. We are in it. We're doing it. This is Magic at its finest. We got big dragons. We got a bunch of characters, in returning to a beloved plane that has some very cool lore attached to it. We don't have to deal with Morph. It's going to be great. Yeah, so, Anyway. Kidding. Actually, I love Morph. I
love Morph too.
It's great, but it's great because it's bad. Yeah. Anyway. But in any event, thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for chatting. Thank you, dear listeners and dear viewers, for hanging out with us. We've definitely appreciated it. And yeah, we will definitely be talking about more Tarkir spoilers. I definitely want to hear more as the prep for that tournament comes up, man. I definitely am curious how that's gonna go. And
I will be letting you guys know.
Yeah.
I'll have tournament reports and the whole 9 yards, and hopefully playing more competitive tournaments leading up to that as well. So we'll see how it goes. But Jaffer's tournament, going to be playing in that one at the end of the month. The Mosh Pit.
Heck yeah.
It's called Jaffer's Coliseum.
Yes.
Jaffer's Mosh Pit, right?
Okay. Yeah, he generally he calls it the Mosh Pit. Yeah. I think the Coliseum might be his Discord server if I'm anyway. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Something like that.
Playing tournaments and stuff, it's going to be great. Nice. So if you guys have any opinions about the spoilers or the new cards we talked about, please let us know in the comments. Tell us what you think about what your favorite cards are, what you think we're totally wrong about, or whatever you want to let us know. I think the last order of business before we say goodbye is there a question of the week this week? I
have not thought of anything. I know, right?
I should have thought of this. Okay, next week we're gonna have one. We're back.
We will.
Now that we're back, we're gonna have a question of the week next week. It's gonna be great.
We will get back
any
into
suggestions
it. Absolutely.
For the question of the week? Also, by all means, let us know.
Yep.
Shoot us an email.
Drop them in the comments. Jump into our Discord. Let us know. We'd appreciate it. And
yeah.
Rock on, man. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Later.
See ya.